Introduction. The false dichotomy. For the last 300 years, humanity has been the victim of the largest, most paralyzing, and most destructive intellectual scam in history, the Great Divide. On one hand, the high priests of materialistic science and academic dogma have told you that you are a mere biological accident, a piece of evolved meat orbiting a sterile rock in an indifferent cosmos, where consciousness is just a chemical hallucination of the brain and the spirit does not exist because it cannot be weighed on a lab scale. On the other hand, the gurus of fast consumption mysticism have sold you an infantile and magical universe, demanding that you turn off your logical brain, reject the friction of matter, and sit down to visualize colored lights while entropy destroys your bank account, your discipline, and your three-dimensional reality. This false dichotomy has engendered a species of incomplete human beings, castrated and extremely fragile in the face of chaos. We have brilliant but depressed and cynical scientists, and we have enlightened but ineffective and poor mystics. We have made the blunder of separating the engine from the fuel. We have divorced the artist. But you, architect of the now, no longer have the time or patience to debate which side to stay on. You are here because you sense in the deepest part of your nervous system a truth that terrifies the dogmatists of both extremes. Ancient mysticism and cutting-edge quantum physics are describing exactly the same geometric matrix. When the millennial mystic speaks of Akasha or the All, the contemporary quantum physicist speaks of the unified field and zero-point energy. When the Buddhist monk teaches about the illusion of separation, physics empirically demonstrates quantum entanglement. There is no magic in miracles, there is only advanced mechanics. In this book, we are going to destroy that glass wall with a titanium sledgehammer. We are going to prove to you that the soul is not an ethereal, poetic, and weak ghost that floats waiting for salvation. The soul is a massive and quantifiable electromagnetic information field. It is the densest memory storage unit of reality. The science of the soul is not a text of spiritual comfort for wounded hearts. It is a heavy engineering manual. It is the ultimate fiber-optic bridge between the immaterial immensity of divine consciousness and the dense brutality of the physical world. Throughout these pages, you are going to learn to stop treating your biological body as a mere sack of carbon and start operating it for what it truly is, a high-precision particle accelerator. You will discover how your central nervous system is the antenna that collapses the wave function. Passive magical thinking is over. Cynical materialism is over. It is time to merge the cold rigor of the quantum laboratory with the creative arrogance of the gods. Adjust your parameters. Turn on the processor. The collision between matter and spirit has just begun. Chapter 1. The Eye of the Observer. Consciousness as hardware and the thermodynamic collapse of reality. I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as a derivative of consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. Max Planck, father of quantum theory. You are not a frightened passenger sitting in the back of the universe waiting to see where fate takes you. You are the electromagnetic lighthouse that illuminates the road in the middle of the quantum fog. What you do not look at does not exist. What you look at with intensity is forced to crystallize and obey. Law of the pragmatic creator. Open your eyes and look at the room you are in. Touch the desk of your workstation. Feel the solidity of the keyboard under your fingers, the temperature of the air, the weight of your own body in the chair. Everything seems incredibly solid, fixed, objective, and immutable. Since you were born, the educational system, society, and old-school materialistic science have programmed you with a devastating lie. They taught you that the universe is a great giant clockwork machine, cold and dead, that exists out there, completely independent of you. They taught you that you are a tiny biological accident, a passive spectator thrown into a world that was already made, and that your only job is to adapt, survive, and react to what matter decides to do to you. That is the worldview of the slave. It is the philosophy of inertia, 200 Hertz. But at the beginning of the 20th century, in the most advanced physics laboratories on the planet, That vision of the universe was shattered into 1,000 pieces. Physicists stopped looking at the universe on a large scale and started observing the smallest building blocks of reality, the subatomic world, electrons, photons, quarks. What they found there was not a solid and predictable world. They found a mathematical asylum that defied all three-dimensional logic. They found that matter at its most fundamental level is not matter at all. It is energy, it is information, and most terrifying of all, they discovered that matter knows when you are looking at it. In this chapter, we're going to dive into the mother of all matrix hacks, the observer effect. We will gut the scientific experiment that broke classical physics. We will understand how your consciousness acts as the hardware that renders space-time, and you will learn to use the absolute focus of your attention as a laser. No more being a victim of the environment. From today on, you are the first cause. Try the double-slit experiment, the crack in the matrix wall. To understand your power, you don't need to believe in mystical dogmas. You need to understand the most famous and disturbing scientific experiment in the history of quantum physics, the double-slit experiment. Imagine you have a cannon that fires paintballs, and in front of you there is a wall with 2 vertical slits, 2 cuts in the wall. Behind that wall, there is a blank screen. If you fire the paintballs through the 2 slits, you will see a logical pattern on the back screen, 2 vertical lines of paint. This is classical physics. Now, physicists did this same experiment, but instead of paintballs, they used electrons, the fundamental building blocks of all matter, of your body, your money, and your computer. They fired individual electrons, one by one, toward the 2 slits. They expected to see 2 vertical lines on the back screen. But the result left them paralyzed with intellectual terror. On the back screen, an interference pattern appeared, multiple vertical bands of impacts. This pattern is only, and exclusively, produced by waves, like when you throw 2 stones into a pond and the water waves collide with each other, creating crests and valleys. Physicists faced an absurdity. The electron, which is a solid particle, matter, was behaving like a delocalized wave of energy. It was as if the electron left the cannon as a particle, turned into a cloud of energy in transit, passed through both slits at the same time, interfered with itself and turned back into a particle. Confused, scientists decided to do something logical. They placed a detector, an observation camera, right next to the slits to look and record which of the 2 slits the electron actually passed through. They wanted to catch matter in the act. They placed the camera, they fired the electron, and here is where the matrix cracked forever. In the exact millisecond the camera was turned on to observe, measure the electron stopped behaving like a wave. It lost its magical and delocalized quality. It passed through a single slit and formed 2 simple vertical lines on the back screen, exactly like a paintball. What on earth had just happened? The simple act of observation, the act of introducing a measurement system or a consciousness that paid attention to the event, retroactively altered the behavior of matter. The electron knew it was being observed. While you weren't looking, it existed as a wave of infinite probabilities. When you looked, it was forced to choose. To this, quantum physics calls the wave function collapse. To the wave function collapse, your atomic sovereignty. The implication of this experiment is so colossal, so brutally devastating for the victim mentality, that 99% of the population prefers to ignore it and keep watching Netflix. What quantum physics is shouting in your face is that reality is not a solid and independent object from you. The entire quantum universe, business opportunities, clients, your relationships, your success, your failure, the health of your bank account, exists in a state of superposition. They are clouds of what could be. None of those events have a physical, dense, and solid reality until a consciousness, you, directs its ray of observation toward them. The universe is like a massive open-world video game. In a modern game, the graphics engine, the software, does not process or draw every tree, mountain, and city on the entire planet at the same time. The game only renders, draws, and makes solid the exact portion of the map toward which your character is looking at that precise millisecond. What is behind your back, or on the other side of the map, does not exist as solid matter. It exists only as computer code, probability. Your consciousness is the hardware that renders reality. Your focused attention, your expectation, and your deep observation are what force the quantum wave of probability to collapse into a solid particle, the experience of your daily life. If this is an empirical fact of the most advanced physics, then you must accept the most terrifying consequence. You are absolutely responsible. The eye of the observer is not a poetic metaphor. It is an electromagnetic and thermodynamic tool. There is no bearded God punishing you in the sky. There is no government that is to blame for your stagnation. There is no bad luck. There is only a soup of quantum waves and you firing the laser light of your attention. That attention as a thermodynamic laser, the ATP consumption. If the act of observing collapses reality, we must understand how the biological machinery of observation works. Your soul, your information and will field, needs a physical interface to operate in this 3D world. That interface is your nervous system, led by the prefrontal cortex and the reticular activating system, RAS. The RAS is a network of neurons in the brainstem that acts as the supreme information filter. Your brain processes more than 400 billion bits of information per second from the quantum field. If you had to be conscious of all that at once, your brain would burst into flames. The RAS filters 99.99% and only lets through your focus. Attention is not a passive process. In the physics of the Creator, attention is electromotive force. Directing your attention requires a massive expenditure of metabolic energy, ATP and glucose. When you focus intensely on an object, a project, or a fear, you are firing a laser of electromagnetic energy into the quantum net. If your attention is weak, diffuse, and jumpy, like that of a TikTok addict changing videos every 3 seconds, your laser is like the light of a cheap flashlight with dead batteries. It illuminates very little and therefore fails to collapse any massive wave function in your life. You stay in a state of perpetual quantum fog. If your attention is sustained, obsessive, sharp, and penetrating, like that of an architect operating in deep work for hours, your laser is of industrial level. You are capable of piercing the steel of inertia, going through bureaucratic friction, and forcing the universe to collapse particles of extremely high density. The eye of the observer works with thermal fuel. Your attention is the cold, hard cash of the 5th dimension. That which you pay attention to you are buying and bringing into the 3-dimensional world. The distraction trap dispersing the wave function. Here is where you understand the true nature of the silent war fought every day in the social matrix. Modern civilization, the media, social networks, tragic news, and the energy vampires in your environment are not trying to steal your money. They are trying to steal something infinitely more valuable, the focus of your quantum eye. The inertial system of the matrix, governed by 200 Hertz minds, needs to collapse a reality of fear, consumerism, scarcity, and dependence. But for that solid reality to exist, the system needs observers. It needs consciousnesses that look at fear so that the wave of fear collapses into matter. When you turn on the television and consume 3 hours of news about economic crises, diseases, wars, and corruption, you believe you are simply informing yourself. Fatal error. From the point of view of quantum physics, you have just lent your biological machine to collapse the matrix of scarcity. You have directed your thermal laser toward catastrophe. You have told the reticular activating system, "This is important, look for more of this." And since the wave function collapses where you look, you begin to experience financial crises and surround yourself with scared people. You were an accomplice in its rendering. The architects of reality and the dictators of the matrix know this. They know that the attention of the masses is the glue that holds the hologram together. That is why the number one, non-negotiable, and relentless characteristic of the God-level creator is their attentional ruthlessness. The sovereign is brutally stingy with what they let enter through their eyes and ears. If a conversation, a video, a book, or a person does not raise their frequency, give them tactical power, or expand their empire, the sovereign turns their gaze away immediately. Tactical indifference is not lack of empathy, it is thermodynamic hygiene. As the probability sniper, applied pragmatic metaphysics. We already know that matter is a wave until you look at it, and that your attention is the laser that freezes it. How do we use this physics in our favor to build an empire from nothing? by transforming yourself into the probability sniper. Assumption is not imagining nice things and waiting for them to happen. Assumption is the violent, sustained, and risky act of fixing the eye of the observer on a specific quantum coordinate that does not yet exist in the material world, and refusing to look away until the universe collapses the particle. Target selection, the superposition state. In the zero-point unified field, all versions of your life exist right now. There is the version where you go bankrupt, and the version where you build a colossal empire and bill millions from the shadows. All are equally valid at the quantum level. Your job is to select the success, radar lock, fixing the internal gaze. Once you select the target, e.g., I am the leading architect of my niche, you have to lock the radar of your consciousness onto that final state. Thinking from the target means you assume the collapse has already occurred. You force your nervous system to feel the relief and certainty. Immunity to 3D evidence, the endurance test. This is the phase where spiritual tourists die. When you open your eyes, the 3D world will show you contrary evidence. Your bank account will be empty. The ordinary mind looks at this scarcity, panics, and collapses the wave of poverty again. The probability sniper looks at 3D scarcity and laughs. They understand that today's solid matter is only the dead shadow of the thoughts they collapsed in the past. It is a residue. The sniper refuses to give authority to the shadows. They keep their internal eye firmly anchored in the vision of the empire, executing raw action daily. By holding the laser of consciousness on the new objective, without blinking in the face of friction, the new wave has no mathematical choice but to accumulate energy, cross the physical barrier, tunneling effect, and violently collapse into three-dimensional reality. The illusion of effort without consciousness, why blind hard work is sterile. There is a very serious syntax error in modern entrepreneurship culture. They tell you, work 16 hours a day, sweat blood, suffer, and the universe will reward you. This is the physics of the beast of burden. If you work 16 hours a day hitting rocks, but your internal eye of the observer is fixed on the vibration of, I am poor and I have to survive, all your 3D effort will be in vain. Why? Because physical effort, without the backup of the quantum collapse of the correct consciousness, generates destructive friction. You are trying to clean the reflection in the mirror by rubbing the glass instead of cleaning the stain off your face. Raw action is non-negotiable, yes, but action does not create reality. Action is the download mechanism for the reality you already collapsed in your consciousness. The architect of the now first collapses the wave in the silence of their mind, operates in alpha theta, and then they open their eyes and execute the physical action, operates in beta, with the fluidity and brutality of one who knows that the result is already a guaranteed geological fact. Seus, quantum collapse protocols, observer hygiene. Quantum theory is fascinating, but it doesn't pay the bills if you don't turn it into an executable verb. You cannot leave the eye of the observer to the chance of your emotions. You have to mechanize it. Here are 3 operational protocols to train your consciousness and shield your attentional laser. The fast from external evidence, selective blindness. When you are in the process of collapsing a new empire, observing current reality to see how you're doing will ruin the experiment. Action. For the first 30 days of a launch, you strictly forbid yourself from looking at stats or seeking external validation signals. You treat your current 3D reality as an old movie you already saw. Your only concern is maintaining internal attentional pressure. By denying the universe the opportunity to scare you with the inertia of the past, you force the system to rapidly load the textures of your new future. The laser audit, the RAS gatekeeper. Your reticular activating system must be programmed militarily. Action. Set 3 alarms on your phone a day. When it rings, stop everything and ask, in the last 60 minutes, where have I been firing my collapse laser? At greatness or at garbage? If you catch yourself collapsing garbage, do not punish yourself. Simply execute the course correction maneuver, smile coldly, cut the useless thought, and redirect the laser beam immediately toward your main goal. This repeated friction trains the muscle of the eye of the observer until it becomes automatic. The superposition rehearsal, enduring thermal shock. Your mind will panic when you try to hold the state of "I am rich" while looking at your empty account. Action: enter a high-voltage environment, a luxury dealership or an exclusive neighborhood. Walk through these places with the breathing of a legitimate owner. Breathe the opulence. If you feel imposter anxiety, observe it as a dead wave. Force your carbon body to relax in the middle of abundance you do not yet physically possess. By doing this, you reduce the electromagnetic resistance of your field. The universe begins to recognize abundance as your base state. Chapter 2: Biological Entanglement, the neural network of the cosmos and the annihilation of spatial distance. I call this spooky action at a distance. I refuse to believe that two particles can communicate faster than the speed of light, because that would mean that the space separating them is an illusion. Albert Einstein, referring with horror to quantum entanglement. If you believe you need a plane ticket, a high society contact, or to beg for a meeting to reach the titans of your industry, you are still operating with the physics of apes. In the architecture of reality, distance is not measured in kilometers, it is measured in hertz. Synchronize your voltage in the isolation of your room, and the universe will bend space-time to put the king in front of your door. Law of the pragmatic creator. You are sitting at your workstation. You look out the window and see your city, your neighborhood, your physical environment. Your bank account is in its infancy, your local contact network is mediocre, and at first glance, it seems you are thousands of kilometers and light years away from the big leagues. The three-dimensional ego whispers to you with poison. Nobody knows you here. The great mentors, the millionaire clients, and the strategic partners live in other cities, move in other circles. You are isolated. It is geographically impossible for you to achieve the massive impact you desire from this room. That voice of defeat is the direct result of centuries of indoctrination in Newtonian physics. You have been convinced that you are a solid object, separated from the rest of the universe by vast expanses of empty space. You have been taught that to connect point A, you, with point B, your client, you must physically cross the distance. That is the route of maximum friction. It is the path of the slaves of time and space. In 1935, quantum mechanics discovered a phenomenon so terrifying and majestic that Albert Einstein tried to refute it for the rest of his life. He called it spooky action at a distance. Today, modern science has proven that this is 100% real. It is called quantum entanglement. In this chapter, we will apply this thermodynamic and quantum principle to your own biology. You will discover that the physical isolation that terrified you is, in reality, an optical illusion. You will learn how your nervous system and heart act as a fractal antenna capable of entangling. Get ready to hack the illusion of separation and master pragmatic telepathy. The neural network of the cosmos is waiting for your access command. Hi, the ghost in the machine, the physics of quantum entanglement. To master the external matrix, you first have to understand how its invisible gears communicate. Forget esotericism for a moment. Let's talk about pure, cold, and hard laboratory physics. Imagine that scientists take a laser and divide a single photon, a light particle, into two twin photons. They share a quantum state. They are entangled. Now physicists take photon A and leave it in a lab in New York. They take photon B and send it to a lab in Tokyo, 10,000 kilometers away. According to classical physics, these are now separate objects, and the only way one affects the other is to send a signal that at most will travel at the speed of light. But then, the scientists in New York alter the spin, the magnetic turn of photon A. They force it to spin upward. In that exact, precise, and indivisible millisecond, photon B in Tokyo instantly spins downward to compensate for its twin. There was no delay, no travel time for any signal. The reaction was simultaneously absolute. And, most disturbing, if you sent photon B to the opposite end of the Andromeda galaxy, millions of light years away, the result would be exactly the same. Zero latency. Einstein hated this. If information travels faster than light, the theory of relativity trembles. But the quantum answer is even more destructive to our biological mind. Information did not travel from New York to Tokyo. It never crossed space. Physical space does not exist on the quantum plane. In the dimension of the unified field, the source code of the matrix, Photon A and photon B never separated. They are exactly the same entity, operating in the same abstract coordinate. The space and three-dimensional distance are just a hologram, a user interface created so that our biological brain can experience separation and linear time. But behind the screen, in the main server, everything is connected to everything else, here and now. That is quantum entanglement. And you, architect of the now, are not made of magic wood. You are composed of trillions of subatomic particles that were born from exactly the same singularity, the Big Bang, as the rest of the universe. Therefore, at a fundamental atomic level, you are already entangled with every atom and every opportunity on Earth. Thus, the illusion of separation, the myth of three-dimensional distance. When you interiorize the physics of entanglement, the entire architecture of your social suffering collapses. The fragile creator suffers because he looks at his statistics and says, "I am disconnected. I need to go out and look for opportunities. I need to chase people." He operates from the belief that he is here and success is there. This mentality generates massive thermal exhaustion. You become a desperate salesman who spends all his energy chasing shadows in the hologram. The architect who masters biological entanglement operates from a cosmic and mathematical arrogance. He knows that distance is a geometric farce. He understands that the millionaire client who needs his service is not in another country. He is occupying the same quantum coordinate as him. The great mentor is not an unreachable stranger. He is a node of his own extended neural network. If you don't have results, it's not because people are far away, it's your frequency. When you adjust the dial of your internal radio, your consciousness, to the exact frequency of sufficiency, authority, and raw action, 600 Hz waves, entanglement activates. In that moment, you no longer have to move your carbon body through space to find your own. You stay exactly where you are in your anechoic chamber. By altering the magnetic spin of your own internal particles, reaching the unshakable certainty that your work is legendary, the particles of the person or opportunity, calibrated to receive that work, instantly spin at the other side of the world to align with you. The matrix detects this synchrony and alters 3D logistics. Synchronicity is not a miracle from God. It is the thermodynamic bureaucracy of quantum physics, joining what was already connected in the source code. There is the biological antenna, tuning the human hardware. To execute this technical magic, you need to know where the control buttons of your body are. Biological entanglement is not achieved simply by thinking positive with the brain. Positive thinking is weak. It is purely electrical. You need heavy magnetism. Modern neurocardiology has shown the body has two fundamental brains. The electrical transmitter, the brain frontal lobe. Your brain generates a measurable electrical field. Every time you have a clear, structured, and focused thought, you are firing a directional laser beam of information toward the quantum field. The electrical thought gives direction and intention. It is the text file. The magnetic accelerator, the heart. This is where 99% of creators fail. They have the strategy, but they don't have the gravity. The human heart is the most powerful electromagnetic organ in your biological body. Its magnetic field is up to 5,000 times stronger than the brain's and can be measured meters away. If the brain's thought is the direction on the text file, the emotion cultivated in the heart is the magnetism, the bandwidth and file weight. Emotion is energy in motion. If you think of your empire, brain, but your heart is flooded with terror and anxiety, low frequency, your electromagnetic field is short-circuited. The brain says, "Come," but the heart screams with a force 5,000 times greater. "Danger, stay away, I am a fraud." The signal you emit is pure static noise, and the universe mathematically will only return chaos and rejection to you. To activate long-range biological entanglement, you have to achieve heart-brain coherence. You have to sit in silence, visualize the work or connection you desire, electrical fire in the mind, and simultaneously force your biological body to feel the relief, the certainty, and the absolute gratitude that the deal is already closed. Magnetic weight in the chest. You become a massive industrial electromagnet. Fair pragmatic telepathy and tactical empathy, the infiltration code. How do you use biological entanglement to hack the market and make the elite want to work with you, without even having crossed a word with them. By using pragmatic telepathy through tactical empathy, mediocre salesmen operate from the ego. They spend hours writing long, cold emails. "I am so-and-so, buy from me." Their antenna is emitting a signal of desperation and lack. The client, thousands of miles away, feels that quantum lack subconsciously and sends the email directly to the trash. The architect who masters entanglement uses energy in reverse. Before sending a message, he locks himself in his anechoic chamber. He turns off his own ego. He dissolves his own needs and uses his consciousness to hack and infiltrate the target's information field. You sit and energetically merge with that ideal client or mentor. You ask with ballistic precision, what is the friction stealing his sleep at 3 a.m.? What noise stops him from peace? Through extreme tactical empathy, which is reading high-level emotional data, you tune into their exact pain. You begin to vibrate at their same frequency of technical need. Then, in the silence of your room, you build the solution. You design the piece of content or code that relieves exactly that millimetric pain. When you press send, you're sending a quantum relief package specifically calibrated for the other person's receiver. The target opens your message, and their reptilian brain suffers a short circuit of amazement. Their reaction is, "How is it possible that this person has read my mind and articulated my pain?" You have just executed a telepathic hack. You have skipped their logical barriers of distrust because you have communicated directly through the neural network of the cosmos. The entanglement is so deep that the client feels you are an extension of their own mind who has come to rescue them. The deal closes without resistance. The danger of toxic entanglement, cutting quantum cables. The unified field network does not judge. It is amoral and purely mathematical. It responds both to the entanglement of greatness and the entanglement of the Maya. This is the lethal danger that destroys creators with good intentions. Entanglement works just as well with survival emotions as with superior creation. Fear, anger, and resentment are gravitationally very dense emotions that generate indestructible entanglements if you don't know how to operate them. Imagine you had a toxic client who scammed you, or a relative who criticized you. You moved away physically. You cut 3D contact, you blocked them, you think you are safe. But it turns out that every Tuesday, while you shower or try to work, your mind remembers what they did. You feel rage in your chest. You begin to argue with them mentally. In the language of quantum physics, you have just committed thermodynamic suicide. Resentment is the strongest magnetic energy in your system. Every time you feel anger toward that person, you are plugging a heavy caliber quantum fiber optic cable directly into their electromagnetic field. It doesn't matter if you haven't seen them for 5 years. In the neural network of the cosmos, you are embracing them. You are actively entangled with their 200 Hz frequency. Since energy flows where attention goes, you are literally draining your own ATP and pumping it through the quantum cable direct to your enemy's nervous system. You are feeding them with your frustration. Even worse, the matrix detects that signal, assumes it's the reality you wish to collapse, and sends you new traitors. Physics is non-negotiable. Hatred binds with the same electromagnetic force as love. If you want to be truly free, forgiveness and apathy are not moral commandments. They are thermodynamic scissors. When you look at the memory and observe it with neutral clinical coldness, the electric current is cut. The toxic entanglement dies from a lack of electromagnetic oxygen, giving you back 100% of your bandwidth to focus on collapsing your massive empire. Firstly, strategic entanglement and disconnection protocols. The mastery of the cosmic neural network requires laboratory rigor. You cannot leave your connection cables loose, generating short circuits around the house. You need network administration tools. Here are 3 advanced protocols to hack your biological antenna and tune in to the nodes of maximum power. The quantum ping, the mastermind radar scan. In computing, a ping checks if a server is online. Action. The night before a crucial meeting, execute the quantum ping in the theta state. Close your eyes. Visualize the face of the other person. From the pure abundance of your core, send them a beam of white light. The beam carries a single data packet. My intention is aligned with your maximum expansion. Our collision will be mutually profitable. We are on the same side of history. Feel the technical certainty that the message was delivered. When you speak to them the next day, their amygdala will be inexplicably relaxed. The electromagnetic guillotine, RAM disinfection. You must actively audit and cut daily parasitic entanglements. Action. Use the electromagnetic guillotine every time a thought of resentment tries to hijack your default mode network. The millisecond you detect you are arguing with a ghost, interrupt it physically. Snap your fingers or clap the table. Imagine an immense red-hot steel blade falling from the sky and cutting a thick cable coming out of your stomach. Say aloud in a military tone, "Connection terminated, reclaiming bandwidth. You do not have permission to drain my system." Replace the void with your goal. The resonance avatar, frequency usurpation. To attract elite allies, you cannot approach them emitting the signal of your current reality, lack. Action. Before starting your day, invoke the resonance avatar. If your goal is to collapse alliances with God-level creators, assume their biomechanics physically. How does the owner of a consolidated empire breathe? How do they sit? You adopt that posture, that sovereign gaze of someone who already has everything. By imitating the electromagnetic signature of the Titan, you trick your own biological hardware to start emitting in their broadband. The matrix only reads the voltage. Chapter 3. Quantum Superposition. The art of being everything and nothing and the thermal tension of the weight. The universe does not ask you to pretend that reality does not exist. It demands that you understand that current reality is only one of infinite possible configurations of matter, and that all others are happening right now, in the dark, waiting for your command. Axiom of quantum architecture. The novice collapses his vision in his mind, opens his eyes, looks at his empty room and cries because the gold is not yet on his desk. The architect of the now collapses the vision, opens his eyes, looks at the empty room and smiles with icy arrogance because he knows the 3D world is dense, slow and stupid. It is only a matter of logistic time for the atoms to reorganize. Enduring superposition is the trial by fire of the gods. Law of the pragmatic creator. You have mastered the eye of the observer. You have understood that your attention is an electromagnetic laser that freezes probability waves. You have locked yourself in your anechoic chamber, tuned in with your biological antenna, and collapsed the most brutal, rich, and dominant version of your empire into the quantum world. On the screen of your mind, the work is done. The order has been processed. The central server of the matrix has accepted the new code. But then, the thermal shock occurs. You open your physical eyes. You step out of meditation or your deep work state, and you crash head-on against the third dimension. Your computer screen shows you that the high-value client still hasn't responded. Your account balance remains exactly the same as yesterday. Bureaucratic problems are still there. Bills pile up. The inertia of the material world hits you in the face with the force of a lead block. It is in this exact millisecond where 99.9% of creators fail. Their mammalian brain, terrified by the dissonance between what they feel inside, wealth and success, and what they see outside, scarcity and friction, panics. The ego screams, "This is a lie. Quantum physics doesn't work. I'm still poor and I'm alone." By emitting that cry of desperation, they direct their eye of the observer towards scarcity again, cancelling the original quantum order and recompiling their miserable reality. They have destroyed the experiment because they did not have the stomach to endure the system's delay. In this chapter, we are going to teach you to inhabit the most unnatural and powerful state in the cosmos, quantum superposition. You will understand why matter is slow, why the Schrödinger's cat paradox is your best tactical tool, and how to develop a tactical schizophrenia that allows you to walk through the mud. You will walk with the posture and absolute certainty of an untouchable monarch. The abyss between your mind and matter is not a punishment. It is the furnace where titanium is forged. Hey, Schrödinger's cat, the sealed box of probabilities. To understand how to operate in this limbo, we must turn to the most famous and misunderstood paradox of quantum mechanics, formulated by the Austrian physicist Erwin Schrödinger in 1935. Imagine a completely opaque and sealed steel box. Inside the box, you place a live cat. Next to the cat, you place a diabolical mechanism, a radioactive atom, a Geiger counter, a hammer, and a vial of poisonous gas. The physics of the radioactive atom is unpredictable. During the next hour, there is exactly a 50% probability that the atom will decay and a 50% probability that it will not. If it decays, the Geiger counter detects it, activates the hammer, breaks the vial of gas, and the cat dies. If it does not decay, the vial remains intact and the cat stays alive. You close the box. An hour passes. From your position as an observer outside the box, what is the state of the cat? Three-dimensional common sense would say, the cat is alive or it is dead, I simply don't know because I haven't looked. But quantum mechanics proves that, until the exact millisecond you open the box and observe the interior, the cat is neither alive nor dead. The cat exists in a state of superposition. It is alive and dead simultaneously. Both realities, that of life and death, coexist superimposed in the same spatial coordinate in the form of probability waves. Only when the observer's consciousness erupts into the system, you open the box, the universe is forced to make a decision and collapses one of the two physical realities. Now let's take the cat out and put your empire inside that steel box. The moment you close your eyes and collapse your quantum vision of greatness, mass success, financial independence, elite network, you have created the box. During the incubation period, your project is in a state of superposition. Your success and failure coexist simultaneously in the information field. The anxious creator, a slave to metrics, cannot stand the uncertainty of the closed box. Every 5 minutes he opens the box, compulsively checks his bank account, checks video stats, calls the client to beg for an answer. By constantly opening the box from a state of anxiety and lack, his eye of the observer collapses the wave again and again toward the state of death. Failure, scarcity, lack of response. He kills the cat with his own impatience. The architect of the now understands the physics of the sealed box. He knows that for the wave of mass success to acquire atomic mass and solidify, he has to leave the damn box closed. He does not look for early evidence. He does not dig up the earth to see if the seed has germinated. He remains in a state of glacial detachment, allowing superposition to work in the shadows. Tactical schizophrenia, the monarch's dissociation. Enduring the closed box requires an extreme psychological skill that we call tactical schizophrenia. In psychiatry, schizophrenia is a break with consensual reality, where the individual perceives stimuli that do not exist in the physical world. It is a destructive disease because the patient loses control. But the conscious creator uses a controlled, voluntary and highly militarized version of this dissociation to subdue space-time. Tactical schizophrenia consists of operating simultaneously on two contradictory planes of existence without your central nervous system suffering a short circuit. In the three-dimensional plane, the carbon body, you walk through your modest house, pay your bills on a tight budget, face the algorithm that hasn't made you viral yet, and operate the slow machinery of the physical world. You do not deny physical reality. You simply treat it as a secondary structure. In the quantum plane, the eye of the observer, while you wash those dishes, your consciousness, the true you, is not there. Your consciousness is permanently installed on the throne of the solitary king. You walk with the biomechanical posture, deep breathing, and electromagnetic frequency of an emperor who has already billed millions. The pain felt by mediocre creators arises from trying to match both planes all the time. They want the bank account to reflect their greatness right now to feel good. The architect, instead, enjoys the discrepancy. When his physical bank account says 100 and his quantum account says $10,000, he does not get depressed. He dissociates. He looks at the $100 on the screen and smiles with an almost psychopathic coldness, thinking, how interesting and primitive this residue of the past is. The 3D system is so slow that it is still showing me the statistics of who I was a year ago. Poor dense algorithm, give it time to render my new line of code. You accept the material present, not as your identity, but as the rubble of your past collapses. You no longer live in that rubble. You are a ghost from the future, operating a body in the present. You have mastered the art of being everything, in the mind, and nothing in the account, without your heart rate altering. Thus the rendering lag, why matter is stupid and heavy. To avoid losing patience and killing Schrödinger's cat prematurely, you need to understand the difference in speeds between the unified field and the third dimension. You need to understand the concept of thermal inertia and the rendering lag, delay. The quantum field of your consciousness operates at the speed of thought. It is zero latency. If you decide in your mind that you are the monarch of your industry, on the quantum plane, you become him instantaneously. There is no friction. But the 3D world is composed of dense matter. Carbon atoms, iron, lead. Matter has mass, and mass generates resistance to change. Imagine you are at the helm of a 300-meter supertanker, traveling at 20 knots. You realize you are going in the wrong direction. You turn the rudder violently, 180 degrees to starboard. Does the ship turn instantly? No. The rudder has already changed the command, your quantum leap. But due to thousands of tons of inertia, the ship will continue moving in the wrong direction for several kilometers before the bow begins to slowly give way, breaks the friction of the water, and starts to trace the new trajectory. The time lapse between turning the rudder and the ship changing course is the bridge of superposition. If the captain panics during that lapse, screams, "The rudder doesn't work," and releases the wheel to return to the previous course, the ship will never turn. When you inject a code of massive wealth and sovereignty, the order is already given. But the matter surrounding you is a heavy supertanker. It has to rewrite contracts, alter algorithms, synchronize meetings of new high-voltage allies, and destroy obsolete alliances. Rendering lag is not a failure of the universe refusing to listen to you. It is the thermodynamic protection of the system so that reality does not collapse into instant chaos every time you change your mind. Your only duty is to hold the rudder locked on the new coordinate while you stoically endure. The bridge of incidence, violent entropic reorganization. Here lies the darkest and least understood secret of pragmatic manifestation. Toxic positivity gurus promise that by visualizing success, the universe will send you butterflies and rainbows. This is a disgusting biological lie. The universe is a high-pressure thermodynamic system. Great readjustments require the destruction of old energy to create the new. When you firmly hold the superposition of being a multi-millionaire ghost creator, the matrix says, "Command received," proceeding to render new reality, initiating demolition protocol of obsolete reality. This process is called the bridge of incidence, and the bridge of incidence often looks like the goddamn apocalypse. For the matrix to deliver the throne, it first has to make space. If your current life is full of junk, the matrix will send a Category 5 hurricane to clear it. Suddenly, just when you think you are vibrating highest, everything collapses. That secure client fires you abruptly. Your toxic partner leaves you. Your YouTube channel suffers a temporary shadow ban. Your savings vanish in an unforeseen expense. You are in the middle of the bridge of incidence and chaos is total. The inertial slave enters a death panic. He cries and curses quantum physics, saying, "I did everything right and the universe is punishing me." He has just released the rudder in the middle of the storm. He fails the test. The architect of the now receives the impact of chaos, wipes the blood from his lip and laughs. He understands exactly what is happening. Entropic reorganization. He knows the universe took that mediocre client away because if it didn't, the architect would never have the temporal bandwidth to design the system that will bill millions next month. He knows loss is not punishment, but surgical removal of inertia. When you are in a state of superposition and everything goes wrong in the 3D world, it is not that you are moving backward. It is that the matrix is burning the weeds of your past to clear the landing strip of your future. Bless the fire. Hold the king's posture and do not interfere with the cosmic demolition crew. Living from the end, the neurochemical anchor, enduring the bridge of incidence and maintaining tactical schizophrenia is not achieved by wishing or hoping the happy ending arrives. Hope is the emotion of beggars. Hope implies doubt. If you have hope, you are telepathically recognizing there is a possibility you will fail. The architect annihilates hope and replaces it with forensic certainty. The act of living from the end, a concept we will sterilize of mysticism and turn into biological engineering. Living from the end means deliberately deceiving your central nervous system, CNS, by flooding it with the chemical cocktail of achievement. Your CNS does not know how to distinguish between a real experience in the 3D world and a hyper-realistic experience you are building in your frontal lobe in the anechoic chamber. If you sit and visualize the bank notification of 6 zeros and allow yourself to feel the chest expansion and dopamine, your biology mutates. Your cells assume the event has already occurred, and if the event has already occurred, you no longer seek it. You no longer sweat for it. You no longer beg. You relax. You enter the electromagnetic state of quantum lead, heavy, immovable, satisfied. Emitting the signal, "I already have it," is checkmate to the matrix. The three-dimensional universe, forced by thermodynamic law to match your interior frequency with exterior matter, detects this state of absolute satiety. It is forced to rapidly materialize physical circumstances to justify the chemical biology you are already experiencing. The world becomes the slave building the palace. The structural tension and void sustenance protocols, maintaining the mind of an emperor. When the outside world treats you like a peasant requires Spartan training. If you let the visual noise of scarcity break your concentration, the superposition collapses against you. Here are 3 mechanical, icy, and non-negotiable protocols to sustain tactical schizophrenia. The false audit block, sealing the cat's box. Biological anxiety will push you to seek proof that your manifestation is on its way. Seeking proof emits a lethal frequency of doubt. Action: implant the sealed box protocol. For a minimum of 21 days after injecting a massive new order into the universe, you forbid yourself from auditing external progress. This means you don't look at video likes to see if they're working. You don't check the bank account for unexpected money. Your only mathematical responsibility is to execute your daily raw action quota and retreat back into your mind. If the amygdala asks for results, respond, "The file is rendering, minimize the tab." Biomechanical faking, hacking the vagus nerve. Your body betrays your real quantum state. A creator who visualizes being a giant but walks hunched over, looking at the ground and breathing shallowly, is emitting pure static. Action: apply biomechanical faking 24/7. Your physical posture must be the 3D anchor of your quantum assumption. From this second, even if you are alone boiling water for tea and have a negative balance, you operate physically as the monarch, shoulders back, chest exposed, gaze lifted to the horizon, precise and deliberate movements, deep breathing. By forcing your skeleton to move with invulnerability, you lock the state of superposition. The linguistic subtext filter, the quantum lie detector. The words you emit to the world reveal the hidden coordinate of your frontal lobe. If you speak from lack, you destroy the bridge. Action: activate the absolute subtext filter. No more phrases implying effort without reward or useless hope. Eradicate words like hopefully, I hope, maybe if I'm lucky. Those words are thermodynamic poison. They emit the signal of a weak victim being dragged by the current. Replace them systematically with cold certainty commands. It is in the rendering process. Collapse is imminent. The architecture is operating. You are programming the acoustic density of the room. Chapter 4. Thermodynamics of Karma, Conservation of Energy, Quantum Accounting, and the Annihilation of Thermal Debt. Energy is not created or destroyed. It is only transformed from one form to another. Julius von Meyer, First Law of Thermodynamics. The universe has no morality. It doesn't care if you're a good person who rescues kittens or a corporate psychopath. The universe only cares about one thing: the accounting balance of your energy. If you inject thermal garbage into the system will return 3-dimensional garbage to equalize the equation. Karma is not a judge with a scale of justice. It is a relentless auditor with a spreadsheet in binary code. Pay what you owe, or the matrix will garnish your future. Law of the pragmatic creator. Throughout your evolution, you have been exposed to one of the most toxic, misinterpreted, and castrating spiritual doctrines in history, the westernized version of karma. They have taught you that karma is a kind of cosmic Santa Claus or a celestial judge watching you from the clouds. They told you that if you misbehave, hurt someone, or have impure thoughts, the universe will send you a punishment to teach you a moral lesson. And that if you are a docile citizen, smile at your neighbors and don't bother anyone, the universe will reward you with money, love, and magical happiness. That is a narrative designed to keep slaves obedient, passive, and terrified. The reality of the Matrix, the architecture that sustains three-dimensional existence, does not operate under human moral concepts like good and evil. Those are inventions of the prefrontal cortex to organize biological tribes. The quantum field has no feelings. It is cold, immoral, exact, and brutally efficient. What ancient Eastern mystics baptized as karma, which in Sanskrit literally means action or work, modern physicists rediscovered thousands of years later in European laboratories and called the first law of thermodynamics. In this chapter, we are going to strip the cheap esotericism from the concept of karma and replace it with systems engineering. You will discover that every thought, every hidden envy, every lie, and every piece of massive value you create in the isolation of your anechoic chamber is in reality an energy transaction. You will learn to audit your intentions so as not to generate thermal debt. And you will discover how to create a quantum surplus so grotesque that the universe is mathematically forced to pay you with wealth and absolute power. Welcome to God's accounting department. The first law, the matrix ledger. To operate as an architect of the now, you must submit to physics. The first law of thermodynamics, also known as the principle of conservation of energy, establishes an irrefutable axiom. In an isolated system, and the universe is the ultimate isolated system, total energy remains constant. Energy cannot appear from nowhere, nor can it disappear into nowhere. It can only be transformed from one state to another. Let's bring this iron law to your brain and your daily behavior. Your physical body and your consciousness, the eye of the observer, operate with metabolic and electromagnetic energy, ATP, neuronal impulses. Every time you emit a thought, make a decision, or execute raw action in the material world, you are taking energy stored inside you and expelling it toward the unified field. You are performing work, karma. And here is where the math becomes terrifying for the mediocre. Every unit of energy you expel into the system generates an exact geometric vacuum in your own electromagnetic field that must be filled so that the universe maintains its balance. If you lock yourself in your studio, enter transient hypofrontality, and spend 12 hours coding revolutionary software, writing a masterbook, or designing a sales system that will solve a very serious problem for thousands of people, you just injected a massive amount of high-frequency ordered energy, 600 Hz, into the cosmic network. The universe records that thermal injection in its ledger. You have created an imbalance. Now the universe owes you energy. And since physics abhors imbalance, the matrix operating system will immediately set to work to fill your vacuum by returning equivalent energy in its densest 3D form. Bank transfers, elite alliances. But the sword of thermodynamics cuts both ways. If you spend the day consuming junk content, complaining about the government, feeling envy of the success of other creators, or scamming your clients by delivering a mediocre product in exchange for their hard-earned money, you are also injecting energy into the system. But it is entropic, static, disordered energy, 200 Hz. The universe also records this. And since you introduced electromagnetic garbage into the circuit, the universe will use that same vibration to give you your change. It will return chaos, equipment breakdowns, toxic clients who will drain you double, and legal problems. There is no offended God punishing you for being a scammer or a whiner. It is simply the matrix spitting back the same chemical formula that you introduced into the funnel. Karma is pure and relentless return on investment, ROI. To thermal debt, the hidden cost of envy and resentment. The most destructive error of the novice creator is believing that their private thoughts are free. They believe that if they feel envy toward a competitor, but don't say it out loud, nothing happens because no one found out. In the quantum level of reality, privacy does not exist. Every thought charged with emotion is emitting a high-power radio wave from your magnetic heart toward the matrix. Envy and resentment are, from the point of view of energy engineering, massive thermal leaks that drag you into quantum bankruptcy. Let's analyze the anatomy of envy. You see an architect in your industry who has just launched a monumental product and is billing millions. Your ego feels threatened. Instead of being inspired, which would absorb their energy for you, you feel jealous. You feel a knot in your stomach. You think they got lucky, they don't deserve it. They don't. What just happened thermodynamically? 1. You activated your amygdala and burned precious reserves of your own ATP and biological glucose to generate that emotion of rage. 2. You directed your attentional laser, the eye of the observer, toward your competitor. As energy flows where attention goes, you literally just took your own vital energy, packed it into an electromagnetic beam, and sent it to them. 3. The competitor, who is busy operating in their anechoic chamber at 600 Hz, receives your energy, their field absorbs it, and they use it as extra fuel. You are financing them. And the disaster doesn't end there. By emitting that envy, you are left empty. You have generated a thermal debt. You have shouted to the universe, "The success of others hurts me because I am not capable of generating it." You just collapsed the wave of scarcity. The Matrix takes note of your declaration of poverty, and by the law of conservation, ensures that your own launch or business fails spectacularly the following month to maintain the coherence of the reality you just chose. The architect of the now is an energy-saving sociopath. He is brutally stingy with his anger and his envy. He knows that hating someone is giving them his own blood. Therefore, when a parasite attacks the conscious creator in the comments, or when a competitor cheats, the architect applies tactical apathy. He doesn't respond. He doesn't get angry. He withdraws the attentional laser immediately, cutting the energy leak and letting the attacker suffocate in their own vacuum of inertia. Hating is a thermodynamic luxury that an empire cannot afford. First, asymmetric value injection, generating quantum surplus. If envy leads you to bankruptcy, how do you create an incalculable quantum fortune? The answer is found in the concept of asymmetric value injection. This is the secret of the great billionaires and the paradigm builders who dominate the world. In the inertial world of the base of the pyramid, 200 Hz, all transactions are symmetric and mean. The employee works exactly 8 hours and demands to be paid for 8 hours. If the boss asks for an extra 10 minutes, the employee demands overtime pay or becomes indignant. The mediocre creator makes a YouTube video and complains if they don't get 1,000 subscribers immediately. The slave is always calculating, what's in it for me? If I give you X, you have to give me X immediately. Operating with that mentality keeps your karma account perpetually at 0. There is no pressure differential. There is no gravity. You attract nothing because you offer nothing extra. The architect of the now operates with a sociopathic, calculated and asymmetric generosity. His strategy is to sink the cosmic scale in his favor based on pure thermodynamic weight. The architect locks himself in his lab and creates a product, content or system that is worth objectively $10,000 in the market. It is a work of art. It has blood, sweat, pure code, and real friction resolution. What does he do with it? He offers it for $100, or even worse for the slave mind, he gives it away for free. The ego of the mediocre screams, "You're stupid. You're losing money. You're giving away your work." But the architect smiles because he knows the matrix ledger. By delivering 10,000 units of pure energy to the network and charging only 100 units in the physical world, the architect has just generated a 3D deficit. In the quantum plane, this translates as a surplus of 9,900 units in his favor. The first law of thermodynamics enters a state of emergency. The universe detects a massive imbalance. A biological entity just injected an outrageous amount of structured value into the system without charging its equivalents. The matrix cannot support this debt. It has to pay the architect. It has to equalize the equation at all costs. How does the matrix pay him? Suddenly, an old video by that creator goes viral and generates massive ad revenue. A billionaire investor sees his free work and offers him a blank check. His immune system strengthens inexplicably. Synchronicity accelerates. The universe always pays its debts, and it always does so with compound interest. The true greed of the solitary king does not consist of squeezing his clients for every cent. His greed consists of delivering so much asymmetric value that the entire universe remains in debt to him for the rest of its existence. You don't want the client to pay you. You want the matrix to pay you. The client has a credit limit. The matrix has infinite funds. The fraud of nicism, passive karma versus active karma. It is imperative to destroy right now the philosophy of passive nicism, which is the favorite refuge of cowards who fear failure. Thousands of people, trapped in jobs they hate and in lives of scarcity, cry saying, "I don't understand. I don't hurt anyone. I pay my taxes. I am kind. Why doesn't the universe reward me?" Let's analyze this with the rigor of a physics engineer. A stone lying in the middle of a meadow doesn't hurt anyone either. The stone doesn't steal, doesn't lie, doesn't insult, and is very peaceful. Should the universe reward the stone with a multinational corporation and an empire of influence? Obviously not. The stone does no harm, but it also does absolutely nothing useful. The stone has zero kinetic energy. Doing no harm does not generate positive karma. It simply avoids negative karma. It keeps you in an eternal, boring, and grey state of thermodynamic zero. Being a good person who sits on the couch watching Netflix without bothering the neighbors injects no voltage into the unified field. Your impact on the cosmic neural network is nil. You are an irrelevant entity to the operating system, and the matrix rewards irrelevance with invisibility and poverty. The universe does not reward passive morality. The universe rewards structured raw action. It rewards the architect who wakes up at 4 a.m., endures the anxiety of superposition, resolves complex mathematical or artistic problems, and injects them into the world to reduce the friction of the human species. That builder might be blunt in speech, might not smile at his neighbors, might dryly reject social invitations, anechoic chamber, and might seem arrogant to the eyes of inertial society. But in the ledger of the cosmos, that builder is throwing tons of vital energy into the net and pushing humanity forward. The matrix looks at him, nods with mathematical respect, and bathes him in gold. Stop being proud of being harmless. Being harmless is the consolation prize of the weak. The conscious creator is extremely dangerous, lethal, and powerful, but has voluntarily chosen to tame his own monster and use it to forge wonders. Auditing the intention vector, cleaning the source code. In physics, force is not just a number, it is a vector. A vector has magnitude, how much force you apply, and direction, where you apply it. In the thermodynamics of karma, magnitude is your raw action, how many hours you work, but the direction is your subconscious intention. If your intention vector is corrupted, the whole castle will collapse due to material fatigue before reaching the goal. Many entrepreneurs start their journey toward wealth or success from a deep wound of resentment. They want to be millionaires to prove to their father they were worth something. They work hard. They enter isolation. They build the empire. They apply magnitude. But the direction, the vector of their energy, is pointing toward the past, toward the wounded ego, and toward revenge. The fundamental vibration of their raw action is resentment. They are building a giant skyscraper, but instead of using titanium beams, they are using rotten mud, 200 Hz frequency. The matrix audits this intention with forensic precision. Since the fundamental energy of their work was conflict and pain, the universe returns exactly that to them. They reach the top, get the money and power, but their empire becomes a prison. They suffer betrayals, constant paranoia, diseases induced by chronic stress, and an unbearable existential void. They have collapsed matter, but the texture of that matter is toxic. The architect of the now, before pressing the start button of the quantum machine, cleans his intention vector. He heals his story. He forgives the ghosts of his past with the electromagnetic guillotine of indifference and ensures his fuel is pure. He builds his empire not to destroy his enemies, nor to prove anything to anyone. He builds it for the thermodynamic ecstasy of seeing how far he can push the limits of his own source code. He builds it for the love of architecture itself. When your vector points to pure excellence, energy flows without friction. Feister karmic accounting protocols. Knowing the law does not save you from it. Only operative obedience protects you. If you want the matrix to start collapsing abundance in your timeline starting tomorrow morning, you have to close the leaks of your own accounting system today. Here are 3 non-negotiable protocols to audit your karma. Payment in advance. Zero tolerance for energy theft. The universe abhors energy thieves. If you download pirated courses, or if you consume a professional's time asking for free advice without offering anything in return, you think you're clever. Action. From today, you apply payment in advance. You don't pirate anything from a fellow builder. If software or a book gives you value, you pay its market price with a cold smile. If you ask a mentor for an hour, you pay their fee or resolve an equivalent problem for them before opening your mouth. By refusing to consume energy without paying its atomic price, you send a military order to your own subconscious. I am an energy generator, not a parasite. I operate from opulence, not from scarcity. The universe will audit this transactional purity and close the leaks where clients tried to steal from you. Non-refundable injection, the anonymity hack. To generate an immediate quantum surplus, you must perform work without claiming 3D authorship. If you do a favor and run to post it on social media so they applaud you, the transaction is cancelled. You already collected your karma in the form of likes. Action. Once a month, execute a non-refundable injection. Help a node of your elite network, or a beginner demonstrating extreme raw action, solve a monumental problem for them, or make a capital injection. But you must do it under strict condition of absolute anonymity. If they find out, the experiment fails. By injecting value without a physical receiver to collect gratitude from, the universe enters thermodynamic panic. The system has an orphaned debt, and since you were the only quantum sender of that energy, the unified field will collapse, a miraculous event in your timeline to square the books. Transmutation of friction, quantum judo. Since you are an object of great gravitational mass, minor bodies, the envious, the haters, will collide with you. The biological response is to attack back, generating a toxic entanglement. Action. Apply quantum judo. When you receive an unjustified attack, do not resist. Absorb the impact in the silence of your anechoic chamber. Imagine the other's hatred is pure static electricity entering your body. Take that raw energy, decouple the person's name, and redirect that kinetic force directly toward your project's motors. Use that rage as pure adrenaline to work 3 more hours. You just stole their vital energy without their permission and used it to enlarge your empire. You left them exhausted and you came out stronger. That is the ultimate thermodynamic victory. Chapter 5. The tunneling effect. Passing through 3-dimensional walls and the dematerialization of the obstacle. If quantum mechanics hasn't profoundly shocked you, you haven't understood it yet. Particles do not respect walls. They simply decide the wall is a statistical illusion and appear on the other side. Free adaptation of Niels Bohr. The slave of inertia sees a 50-meter-high wall, calculates he lacks the energy and money to climb it, sits down and cries while cursing the system. The architect of the now looks at the same wall, understands it is 99.9% empty space, alters his electromagnetic vibration and walks through it. Brute force is for beasts of burden. Law of the pragmatic creator. You have cleaned your intention. You have accumulated gravitational mass. Your eye of the observer is fixed on the target, and your karmic account is in a massive surplus. Your entire nervous system is prepared to receive the opulence and dominance you deserve. But when you start executing raw action, you hit the defensive matrix. You encounter the wall. It can take many forms: a saturated market dominated by billion-dollar corporations, an algorithm that hides your masterpiece in the shadows, a brutal financial crisis, a legal obstacle, or the plain lack of capital to finance your next evolutionary leap. Newtonian physics and traditional logic give you 2 options. First, surrender. Accept your place at the base of the pyramid and say, "It is impossible." Second, push the wall with your hands, work 18 hours a day, spend all your money, and sweat blood trying to tear down a concrete structure with your fragile biological skull. Both options are death traps designed to consume your ATP, but quantum mechanics offers a third way, a way so radical and mathematically proven that it seems like black magic to the uninitiated. It is the phenomenon responsible for the sun shining, DNA mutating, and your computer's microchips working. It is called the quantum tunneling effect. In this chapter, we will destroy your concept of what an insurmountable obstacle is. We will study how a particle without enough energy manages to cross an impossible physical barrier by taking a loan from the absolute vacuum. You will learn to dematerialize business problems and start tunneling through the fabric of reality, the physics of the impossible, the potential barrier. To master this infiltration technique, we must observe the most deranged behavior of subatomic particles. In classical physics, if you throw a tennis ball against a 3-meter-high brick wall with very little force, low kinetic energy, the ball will mathematically bounce back 100% of the time. It cannot pass through or over it. Physicists believed electrons behaved the same way. They thought that if they fired an electron against a potential barrier, an electromagnetic wall, without enough energy, it would always bounce. But the universe laughed at classical physics. They discovered that a small percentage of those electrons simply disappeared and reappeared. They did not go around the wall. They did not break it. They did not jump it. Literally, they dug a quantum tunnel through probability and passed through the solid barrier as if it were fog. How is this possible under the conservation of energy? The answer lies in wave-particle duality and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. First, remember, the electron is not a solid billiard ball, it is a wave of probabilities. When the wave hits the wall, it doesn't stop suddenly. A small part of that wave leaks and extends beyond the barrier. There is a mathematical probability, greater than 0, that the particle will be found on the other side. Second, the uncertainty principle dictates that the universe is blurry. You can borrow a massive amount of energy from the quantum vacuum for an extremely short millisecond, use that energy to cross the wall, and return it upon reaching the other side without violating thermodynamics. The electron steals energy from the future. You, the architect of the now, are made of those same quantum particles. If the pieces that compose your body and brain can do this, your mind and electromagnetic field can execute the tunneling effect on a macroscopic scale. Your empire is waiting for you on the other side of the concrete. Curse the three-dimensional wall and the slave's fatigue. Let's take this particle physics to the trench of your daily life. Suppose your quantum vision is to raise a digital platform that bills $1 million a year. You have assumed the reality. You have collapsed the wave. But the 3D wall rises. You have no marketing budget. Competitors have a 10-year lead and you lack contacts. The creator, operating at 200 Hertz, believing he is a solid tennis ball, looks at this wall and behaves in a Newtonian way. He tries to headbutt the wall down. He publishes 5 mediocre videos a day begging for attention. He spends his savings on useless ads. He works 20 hours a day and destroys his nervous system. The wall of competition and bureaucracy suffered not even a scratch. The slave crashed and bounced, left shattered on the ground. The slave's error was believing the wall was solid and that the only way to beat friction was by applying more friction. He believed the lie that hard work and suffering are the only currency. The architect of the now stops before the wall of impossible competition and smiles. He knows three-dimensional matter is 99.999% empty space. He knows giant corporations and algorithms seem unbreakable, but they are actually probability clouds sustained by collective fear. The architect does not compete. He does not push. The architect executes the tunneling effect. He radically alters his own vibration, his offer and his source code until he becomes undetectable to the competition's radar. Instead of fighting for crumbs at the base of the wall, he changes phase. He offers a value so brutal and different that the wall simply no longer applies to him. 30. Surrendering the how, logistic suicide. To pass through a quantum wall, there is a non-negotiable psychological rule. You have to abandon your unhealthy obsession with the how. When the electron tunnels in the lab, it doesn't map a plan. It doesn't use a calculator to measure the wall's thickness. If it tried to measure the wall, it would solidify and bounce back. The electron simply assumes its wave nature, vibrates, and trusts the mathematical probability of existing on the other side. The human ego, the frontal lobe, is obsessed with the how. When you collapse a giant goal, e.g., getting a billionaire mentor, your inertial brain immediately tries to plan the how. By trying to dictate the exact logistic path for your desire, you have solidified your quantum wave. You have become a tennis ball. You have built the wall yourself. You are limiting infinite intelligence, which has trillions of variables at its disposal, to using only the pathetic, boring, and difficult plan your ape brain devised. The tunneling effect demands the logistic suicide of your ego. The architect of the now declares the what, the end goal, collapsed with forensic certainty, and absolutely, violently, and completely renounces the how. It is not your job to know how the universe will reorganize atoms to put that $1 million in your account. Your job is to maintain the superposition frequency, execute your daily raw action, and allow the matrix to find the most efficient microscopic tunnel to deliver the result. Sometimes the tunnel is your computer breaking, forcing you to a cafe where you happen to meet an investor. Logic is rare, absurdity and speed are common. The vacuum loan injecting future energy. We saw that the electron tunnels because it borrows energy from the quantum vacuum through the uncertainty principle. How do you borrow that thermodynamic energy to jump over bureaucracy, poverty, or stagnation? You have to steal the energy from your own future. In your current state, your biological body is producing low ATP. You are tired and depressed. If you work from that fatigue, you will bounce off the market's wall because your impact is weak. You lack the kinetic energy to break the algorithm. This is where you use the anechoic chamber and the eye of the observer technology. You lock yourself in silence, you turn off the default mode network, and in the darkness of your mind, you connect with the quantum version of yourself that already crossed the wall. You connect with the emperor who is already on the other side, signing contracts and counting money. That future self has a massive electromagnetic signature. He feels euphoria, power, relaxation, and sovereignty. Your job is to absorb that emotion in real time. Use imagination to induce a chemical change in your bloodstream now. Feel cortisol drop, and testosterone, dopamine, and oxytocin flood your system. Your heart begins to pump blood with the magnetic force of a winner. Bingo, you have just executed the vacuum loan. You borrowed thermodynamic energy, elevated emotion, from an event that hasn't happened chronologically. Open your eyes. Your physical body now has an excess voltage that doesn't match your current material reality. Use that stolen energy immediately. Sit at the keyboard and execute your work. Write your code. Because you are operating with the high-octane fuel of final success, your work will be so dense and magnetic that it will pass through market defenses like a ghost. The competition wall cannot hold you because you are vibrating at a frequency for which the wall is transparent. The physics is perfect. Thermomechanical faith, the audacity of the blind leap. Tunneling through the quantum wall doesn't feel like an epic Hollywood victory while it's happening. It feels like a leap into the void without a parachute. It feels like death. Imagine running toward a concrete wall at full speed. Your amygdala screams, "Break! You'll break your skull. The wall is solid." Ah! For the tunneling effect to work, you must run toward the wall and in the millisecond before impact, not doubt. You must believe with a certainty so cold and mathematical that the wall is an illusion, so that you don't close your eyes or slow down. If you doubt, you reactivate your solid particle state and crash. We call this thermomechanical faith. It is not the religious faith of begging a saint. It is the technical faith of an engineer who blindly trusts the math of the bridge he just built. How does this look in business? The wall is having only $100 in the bank and needing to pay rent in 2 days. Logic says panic. Breaking before the wall is looking for a mediocre job to survive. The blind leap, tunneling effect, is looking at that $100 and the rent due date, smiling with ice in your veins, and investing those $100 in your platform server, or simply ignoring them to work 16 hours straight on the masterpiece that will change your industry. You refuse to operate from fear. You refuse to contract your electromagnetic field. You go at maximum speed against imminent bankruptcy, and when you hold that unbearable tension without blinking, the wall of poverty dematerializes. An unexpected call comes. A video goes viral. The matrix saves you at the last second. 5 frequency shift, tactical invisibility to attacks. The tunneling effect isn't just for reaching impossible goals. It is the ultimate defensive shield. It makes you invisible to friction. In wave physics, Two signals only interfere, clash, cancel, or amplify if they are in a similar frequency range. If frequencies are shifted, waves pass through each other like ghosts. When you operate your empire, you will receive attacks. Disloyal competitors, bureaucrats trying to fine you, haters injecting venom, global crises. The creator who perceives himself as solid matter receives the impact, gets offended, and joins the war. By defending himself, he matches his frequency with the attackers. He just solidified the problems wall. Now he must spend thousands of ATP units on lawyers and stress. The architect of the now uses frequency shift. When a crisis hits or haters attack, the architect applies extreme tactical apathy. He does not respond. He does not alter his raw action routine by a single millimeter. He observes the 3D attack from the throne of the solitary king and says, "Fascinating low-frequency friction, but I don't operate in that bandwidth." He keeps compiling code and elevating voltage. By not offering emotional resistance, the attack passes through his empire without touching a single pillar. 7's quantum infiltration protocols. Talking about passing through walls is poetry, unless you have the quantum hammer in hand to execute the maneuver when the water reaches your neck. If you don't make it a mechanical protocol, your amygdala's panic will win. Here are 3 cold protocols to dematerialize any corporate or financial obstacle. Abandoning the how, deactivating ego logistics. When facing a problem with no logical 3D solution, your brain goes hyperactive trying to force locked doors. Action. Write the insurmountable problem on paper. Then write below, "The 3D solution is irrelevant to me. The quantum collapse is already executed on the main server. Cross out the problem. Burn it." You have formalized the surrender of the how. From that second, you forbid yourself from thinking about the problem. You focus 100% of your RAM on creating massive value. You yield the logistic work of moving atoms to the unified field. The tunnel will open via the path of least resistance while you look away. Ghost frequency, invisibility to friction. The 3D universe will try to scare you by showing you the wall's thickness. Action. Apply ghost frequency to any sudden rejection. If a giant contract falls at the last minute, you have exactly 60 seconds to abort the emotional reaction. Do not hit the table. Do not complain. Say, "Approved." This wall is an illusion. Offer no resistance to temporary failure. By accepting the loss without a shred of pain, you nullify the solidity of the negative event. You become transparent. The energy you would have spent on frustration is invested in redesigning the strategy in the next 10 minutes. You have tunneled through rejection. Base state loan, future energy injection. You cannot pass through the wall if you feel weak or poor. You need the voltage of the monarch on the other side now. Action. Before the decisive email or meeting, execute the base state loan. Lock yourself in silence for 2 minutes. Feel the gravitational weight of having won. Flood your chest with triumph. Open your eyes. Your body is now operating with energy stolen from the quantum future. Execute the action in that exact millisecond before the logical ego takes control. The impact of your action will have a piercing force capable of tearing down the Great Wall of China. Chapter 6. Electromagnetic Gravity. The tuning of the heart, wave coherence, and the physics of lethal attraction. The magnetic field of the heart is up to 5,000 times more powerful than that of the brain. You do not attract what you think. You attract that with which your heart electromagnetically resonates. Principle of quantum neurocardiology. The slave sits in his room, closes his eyes and repeats like a parrot, "I want to be rich, I want to be successful." His brain emits an electrical spark asking for abundance, but his heart, terrified of debt, emits a massive magnetic pulse of scarcity and terror. The universe reads this dissonance, laughs at the short circuit, and delivers exactly what the heart screamed: more misery. Thought directs, but only the heart drags matter. If you do not master your chest, you are a drifting satellite. Law of the pragmatic creator. You have done the intellectual work. You have designed the architecture of your empire. You have the blueprints clear in your frontal lobe. You have renounced the logistic how, and you have locked yourself in the anechoic chamber to execute daily raw action. And yet sometimes you feel like you are pushing a freight train with your bare hands. You work infinite hours, you structure your code, you publish your works, but three-dimensional reality seems to resist. The big clients don't quite fall into your orbit. Money flows, but with friction. You feel that although your mind is sharp as a scalpel, you lack the gravitational force necessary for the golden asteroids to inevitably collide with your planet. The answer is not found in working more hours. It is found in the greatest anatomical and quantum miscalculation, believing the brain is the only reality-creating organ. In this chapter, we are going to leave psychology behind and enter the engineering of electromagnetic fields. We will study how waves interact in a vacuum, how Coulomb's law operates on your ambitions, and the most devastating scientific discovery. Your heart is not a simple blood pump. It is a wild and destructive magnetic accelerator. Get ready to align mind and chest and become an irresistible transducer of gravity. Either positive thinking scam, electricity without magnetism. The modern personal development industry has castrated millions of creators by selling positive thinking as the key to success. They tell you that if you repeat, "I am a money magnet," 1,000 times in the mirror, the universe will obey you. Let's analyze this with the cold rigor of quantum physics and electrophysiology. Your brain is a massive neural network that communicates via electrical synapses. Every time you have a thought, you generate a microscopic electrical current. As James Clerk Maxwell taught us, every moving electrical charge generates an electromagnetic field around it. Therefore, your thoughts are directional electrical signals, but electricity alone in the human body is directional and of very low power. The brain's electric field is sharp and precise, but its area of influence is weak. Thought is the steering wheel of a car. It tells you where the wheels are pointing. It is the text file that says, "I want to build this empire." What good is the steering wheel if the car has no engine? Thought, the brain, lacks the traction force to drag the dense matter of the 3D world toward you. Electricity pushes the signal, but it is magnetism that exerts the gravity that pulls the response toward your spatial coordinate. The magnetic organ is the heart. 2. The physics of the biological electromagnet, the reactor in the chest. Forget all the romantic and weak connotations society has assigned to the heart. In the pragmatic matrix, the heart is a nuclear fission reactor and the most beastly magnetic generator in your anatomy. The HeartMath Institute, through decades of neurocardiology research, has demonstrated data that should rewrite textbooks. The electrical field of the heart is 60 times greater in amplitude than the electrical field generated by the brain. The magnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain. It extends several meters outside your physical body, actively interacting with the electromagnetic frequencies around you. Your heart is composed of more than 40,000 neurons, sensory neurites, that act independently of the brain. They feel, process information, and make quantum decisions milliseconds before your frontal lobe even realizes what is happening. While your brain encodes thoughts, your heart encodes the magnetic field through emotions. Emotion is not an abstract psychological phenomenon. Emotion is thermal energy in motion. It is the magnetic signature of your biocomputer. When you feel terror, fear of bankruptcy, envy or desperation, your heart enters an arrhythmic and chaotic rhythm. It emits a magnetic field of extremely low and disordered frequency, static. When you feel absolute certainty, peaceful arrogance, sovereign power, and the tactical coldness of the solitary king, your heart enters coherence. It emits a toroidal magnetic field, massive, structured, and of immense gravity. The manifestation equation is electrical thought, direction, plus magnetic emotion, attraction. Gravity. If your brain is thinking, "I am a world leader," but your heart is trembling with the emotion of, "I am a fraud in debt," the universe does not obey the thought. The matrix always, mathematically and non-negotiably, will obey the magnetic field that is 5,000 times stronger. It will collapse the reality of the fraud in debt. 3. Wave resonance, constructive interference. To understand how this flesh and blood electromagnet interacts with the outside world, we must introduce a vital concept: constructive and destructive interference. Imagine two waves traveling through a pond. If the crest of wave A hits exactly the trough, the lowest point of wave B, destructive interference occurs. The energies cancel each other out and the water stays flat. The result is zero. This is the state of 99% of mediocre entrepreneurs. Their wave A, frontal lobe, vibrates in abundance. I will earn my first million. Their wave B, magnetic heart, vibrates in fear. I don't have money for rent. Both waves clash and cancel. The thermal energy dissipates as stress. In the 3D world, the result is exactly zero. Nothing changes. They work hard in matter, but their quantum field is nullified by the internal short circuit. Now, what happens if the crest of wave A mathematically coincides with the crest of wave B? Constructive interference occurs. The two waves do not just add up. They merge and multiply their amplitude, creating a superwave of overwhelming power that sweeps everything in its path. This is heart-brain coherence. It occurs when the architect directs his attention to the vision, wave A, and simultaneously forces his heart into gratitude, wave B. The brain and heart lock into the same frequency. They enter constructive resonance. The architect's electromagnetic field expands violently. He stops being an incandescent bulb emitting weak light and becomes an industrial laser. All photons travel in the same phase and direction. This laser cuts through space-time. When you emit this superwave, the people, contracts, and money that resonate with that same massive frequency undergo Coulomb's law, the force of attraction between charges. They are literally dragged into your gravitational field. You become thermodynamically irresistible. Fifth, quantum lead, the emotion of cold certainty. The industry has lied to you about which emotion you should cultivate to activate the machine. They have told you that you must feel euphoria or burning desire. This is a lethal code error. Desire is a frequency of lack. If you desire intensely, you are screaming to the quantum field, I don't have it, I am empty. Hyperactive euphoria, on the other hand, is an erratic and desperate beta wave. It is the emotion of the slave who just won the lottery and doesn't know what to do because he feels it was an unearned miracle. The architect of the now does not operate with desire or euphoria. The architect operates with quantum lead. Quantum lead is the magnetic emotion of cold, heavy, and inevitable certainty. Imagine you go to Amazon, buy a book, and the system confirms guaranteed delivery tomorrow. How do you feel in the next 24 hours? Are you hyperventilating, praying to the gods of logistics for the book to appear? No, you forget about it. You feel a boring, flat, and absolute certainty. You know the book is already yours, you are just waiting for the truck to cover the distance to your door. You relax completely. There is no friction, no doubt. That relaxation, that cold, heavy, and non-negotiable certainty is the signature of the Creator God. When the architect designs his next giant project, he does not jump for joy or beg for success. He sits in the darkness, emits the order from the frontal lobe, and tunes his heart to the frequency of cold certainty. The code has been injected. The universe is mobilizing the logistics. It is a fact. This quantum lead emotion has the highest gravitational density in the universe. By feeling this tactical apathy toward the weight, you communicate to the unified field that you and the goal are already one. The electromagnet turns on at 5,000 volts, and reality runs to collapse the order at your door before the day ends. The alchemist of friction, turning terror into fuel. Tuning certainty when the bank account is fat is child's play. But the title of architect is earned in the trench. What do you do when the matrix hits you with a massive crisis? Mammalian biology will do what it is designed to do. Inject cortisol, fire the amygdala, and make your heart beat with pure terror. Your electromagnetic field will contract into a survival state, and you will emit the frequency of the victim. If you allow this to last more than 60 seconds, the wave of terror will annihilate all the quantum surplus you had built. You will begin to collapse more disasters by pure magnetic attraction. This is where the solitary king demonstrates technical mastery. He becomes an alchemist of friction. Instead of fleeing terror, he applies electromagnetic transmutation. Anger, terror, and deep anxiety generate an enormous magnetic field. It is a very high voltage simply spinning in the wrong negative direction. The slave tries to calm down, which is impossible because energy is not destroyed. The architect takes that boiling energy and subjects it to the will of his frontal lobe. He feels the fire of terror in his chest, and through psychological violence and tactical breathing, he takes control of the steering wheel. He says, "Excellent. I have a voltage of 5,000 hertz of pure intensity in my system. The motor is at maximum power. Now, instead of using this motor to collapse fear of bankruptcy, I will reverse the polarity of the magnets." He takes all that rage and adrenaline and couples it violently to the vision of his empire. He uses terror as high-octane gasoline to feed cold certainty. He tells himself, "This external friction is proof the universe is recalibrating the track. They are moving planets to make room for my crown." In less than 3 minutes, the terror is transmuted into a psychopathic, aggressive, and creative focus. Your electromagnetic field goes from a black hole of fear to a supernova burst of raw execution. You sit at the keyboard, and the work you produce in that state of transmutation has enough gravitational density to alter the consciousness of your entire industry. You have used your enemy's weapon to blow up his own HQ via the halo effect, bending the will of the masses. When you hold this heart-brain coherence and quantum lead for months operating in the shadows of the anechoic chamber, your biocomputer undergoes a permanent mutation. Your electromagnetic field no longer contracts or expands based on the weather. It stabilizes in a constant massive toroidal emission. We call this the thermodynamic halo effect. It is the reason why when the architect finally enters a room, goes on stage, or publishes a text, the environment submits. Those present don't know about quantum physics. They only know the temperature of the room just changed. They know the individual is not needy. You emit a force field of self-sufficiency so overwhelming that the amygdalas of executives or competitors immediately relax and assume a posture of biological submission. The slave enters the room begging for an opportunity, with the heart emitting the magnetism of doubt. The room devours him. The architect enters emitting the gravity of a black hole. He doesn't ask permission to sit. The room rearranges the chairs automatically for him to take the center. He doesn't have to raise his voice or use cheap persuasion. His mere electromagnetic presence bends the will of the space he occupies. The halo effect is the culmination of electromagnetic gravity. It is the power to influence, sell, and dominate without emitting a single word from a place of need. You are the densest node in the network, and the network, by pure fluid physics, flows toward the zone of highest density. SIT, gravitational alignment protocols. Understanding neurocardiology is useless if you don't install it as an automated OS in your raw action routine. You cannot leave your heart's magnetism at the mercy of the news or your email. Here are 3 industrial raw biomechanical protocols to ignite the 5,000-volt electromagnet every morning. Stator calibration, the coherence lock. A stator is the fixed part of a motor that generates the magnetic field. Action. Before turning on your screen in the morning, sit in the dark. For 5 minutes, execute locked frequency breathing. Inhale 5s, hold 5s, exhale 5s. Focus 100% of your laser on your chest. Visualize your heart as a turbine motor generating incandescent light. Inject the heavy feeling of anticipated gratitude. Thank the universe for the $1 million contract or global impact as if it happened yesterday. When you feel that dense heat, the lock has clicked. You are ready to shatter the code. Cognitive dissonance filter, annihilating the short circuit. During your workday, your logical mind will try to inject doubt based on the past. Action. Activate the dissonance firewall. Every time you are executing a task and catch yourself thinking with fear, stop your hands immediately. Pull them away. To keep typing while your heart emits terror is to print junk code into the matrix. It is poisoning the well of your own work. Step away. Execute kinetic redirection, fast push-ups, to metabolize cortisol. You only return to the keys when you have forced your heart back to cold certainty, quantum lead. The inevitability pulse, end-of-day emission. How you disconnect your biological machine determines how the unified field processes your data during sleep. Action. When you finish your day, do not go to sleep reviewing unsolved problems. That leaves the electromagnet on the frequency of chaos all night. Before closing your eyes, emit the inevitability pulse. Shut down the frontal lobe and declare from your chest, "The work has been injected into the network. Quantum collapse is geometrically inevitable. The matrix handles logistics while the operator rests. You fall into sleep without a trace of anxiety." Chapter 7. Three-dimensional holography. The fractal of reality, the implicit order and the domination of the microcosmos. The three-dimensional physical universe we experience daily might be nothing more than a holographic projection of two-dimensional information encoded at the limits of our cosmos. Leonard Susskind, father of string theory and the holographic principle: if your desk is a chaos of papers, your computer is full of junk files, and your bed is unmade, do not talk to me about how you are going to bill your first $1 million. The matrix is a mathematical fractal, not a random canvas. You cannot inject order into the macroscopic scale of your empire if you allow entropy to rot the microscopic scale of your room. The universe does not listen to what you promise to do tomorrow with the world. The universe scans what you are doing today with your square meter. Law of the pragmatic creator. The human ego has a pathological tendency to despise the small. The novice creator, intoxicated by concepts of quantum manifestation and great empires, directs their gaze exclusively toward the distant horizon. They dream of signing multi-million-dollar contracts, leading massive tribes, and altering the course of their industry. But while their mind floats in those fantasies of power, the macrocosmos, their immediate reality, the microcosmos, is a thermodynamic disaster. Their workstation is full of dirty coffee cups. Their digital desktop has 150 unclassified files. Their schedule is a structureless chaos. They arrive 10 minutes late to meetings. Their physical body is fed with junk food, and they are incapable of keeping a small promise to wake up at 6 a.m. without pressing the snooze button on the alarm. The slave justifies themselves by saying, "Those are small things, unimportant details. When I have the big business, I will hire someone to clean my mess." This justification is the quantum death certificate of any empire. In advanced physics, the division between the big and the small is an optical illusion of our biology. The universe is not composed of watertight compartments where some laws apply to your business and others to your room. Reality is a continuous tissue. In this chapter, we are going to destroy your arrogance toward details using the holographic principle and fractal geometry. You will discover, with terror and awe, that the complete information of your financial future and global success is already encoded in the way you brush your teeth and organize your digital folders. You will learn to become a tyrant of microscopic order so that the macroscopic surrenders at your feet by simple mathematical inertia. Welcome to the architecture of pixels. The holographic principle, the physics of indestructible information. To understand the magnitude of what we are talking about, we must go to the absolute limit of modern physics, the edge of a black hole. During the 70s, Stephen Hawking proposed an idea that terrified the scientific community, the information paradox. He said that when an object falls into a black hole, its information is lost forever. This violated the most fundamental laws of quantum mechanics, which established that information, like energy, cannot be destroyed. It was physicist Leonard Susskind who, after an intellectual war with Hawking, saved physics by proposing the holographic principle. Susskind demonstrated mathematically that when a 3D object falls into a black hole, its information does not disappear in the dark center. Instead, all the information necessary to reconstruct that object in 3D remains printed, flattened, and encoded on the 2D surface of the black hole's edge, known as the event horizon. The cosmological conclusion of this discovery will blow your frontal lobe. The maximum amount of information contained in a 3D volume does not depend on its volume, but on the area of its boundary surface. Our 3D reality could literally be a holographic projection emerging from 2D information encoded at the limits of the universe. But let us look at the most fascinating optical quality of a physical hologram. If you take a normal photograph of an apple and cut it in half, you have half the image of the apple. You have a piece. But if you create a hologram of an apple on a glass plate, and you drop that plate on the ground, breaking it into 100 pieces, If you take the tiniest fragment of that broken glass and pass a laser over it, you will not see a little piece of the apple. You will see the three-dimensional image of the entire apple. The image will be of lower resolution, perhaps a bit blurrier, but the information of the whole is contained absolutely in every micropart. Bring this physics to the architecture of your life. You are a hologram interacting with a holographic universe. You cannot cut your life into isolated compartments. You cannot say, in my business I am an impeccable professional, but in my nutrition and my home I am a lazy disaster. The matrix does not read what you tell it. You are in the area of your life that suits you. The matrix passes the laser of reality through any random fragment of your existence, and if the laser passes through the fragment of how you organize your files, and the image it projects is chaos, the universe assumes your whole is chaos. The universe will not deliver the $1 million because the entropy of your micro-fragment, the trash on your desk, corrupts the holographic projection of the 3D wealth you are trying to collapse. The information of the whole is in the pixel. If the pixel is rotten, the entire screen is failing. There's fractal geometry, as above, so below. The second mathematical tool that proves you cannot escape your small habits is fractal geometry, popularized by the brilliant mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot. Euclidean geometry, circles, squares, is incapable of describing nature. Clouds are not spheres, mountains are not cones, and lightning does not travel in a straight line. Nature is fractal. A fractal is a geometric object whose basic structure repeats at different scales. This property is called self-similarity. If you look at a tree branch closely, you will see the branch itself looks like a miniature tree. If you cut a leaf and look at its veins, they form the same pattern as the entire tree. The matrix is encoded in fractal language. The micro and the macro are a perfect mirror. Thousands of years ago, the Kybalion summarized it in a lethal phrase, as above, so below, as within, so without. Today, we call it scale invariance. What does this mean for the ghost creator and their financial empire? It means your company, your sales, and your elite relationships, the above or macroscopic scale, are geometrically tied to how you manage your 6 a.m. routine and the cleanliness of your words, the below or microscopic scale. If you tolerate 20% inefficiency in your personal finances, micro, fractal geometry guarantees there will be 20% chaos in your future multinational company, macro. If you cannot master gravity over an army of 10 cells, it is mathematically impossible for the matrix to give you command over an army of 10,000 people. 3. The entropy of the microcosmos, your desk is your bank account. We must use the language of thermodynamics to understand the energy cost of disorder. The second law of thermodynamics teaches us about entropy, a measure of disorder in a system, quantified masterfully by Ludwig Boltzmann with his famous equation. This equation demonstrates that nature spontaneously tends toward chaos and the loss of useful energy. If you do not actively invest energy to maintain an ordered structure, the structure will rot and crumble on its own. An abandoned building becomes dust. It never spontaneously becomes a skyscraper. Your daily life, the microcosmos, is subject to this same relentless entropy. Let us look at your workspace. If your workstation is surrounded by useless objects, old bills, tangled cables, and dirt, you are inhabiting a high-entropy environment. The excuse of the mediocre is the myth of creative disorder. They claim a chaotic desk fosters creativity. This is a neurobiological farce. Physical disorder in your environment sends constant visual signals to your reticular activating system, RAS. Your frontal lobe has to spend small fractions of energy, ATP, to ignore the trash and concentrate on the screen. Your brain processes physical disorder as pending tasks at a subconscious level. Your RAM memory saturates trying to process the entropy of the room. The architect of the now understands that high-voltage quantum creation demands a surgical and sterile environment. Enter the microchip development lab of Intel or Apple. Do you see creative disorder? No, you see clean rooms, pressurized environments where the amount of dust in the air is controlled to the last particle. Why? Because at a nanometric scale, the slightest speck of dust, entropy, ruins the entire processor. If you want to collapse $1 million empire, your room, your desk, and your computer wallpaper must have the order of an operating room before open-heart surgery. By injecting brutal order, S-Itaro $0, into your physical microcosmos, your brain is freed from visual friction. The metabolic energy you previously spent on tolerating chaos is channeled entirely toward your eye of the observer, and holographically, you send the matrix the most arrogant message. I have mastered entropy in the matter I can touch. I am qualified for you to deliver the matter I cannot yet see. If the thermodynamic butterfly effect, the lethal impact of detail. In chaos theory, a dynamic system highly sensitive to initial conditions will experience radically different results from the slightest microscopic variation. It is the butterfly effect. The flap of a butterfly's wings in Brazil can set off a tornado in Texas. In your reality architecture, the butterfly flap is that boring micro-habit you decide to skip because today you are tired. Suppose your protocol includes sending a report to an elite client at 9 a.m. sharp. It is 8:58 a.m., and you decide that sending it at 9:15 a.m. is no big deal. In the world of inertia, 200 Hz, nothing changes. No one cares. But in the world of high-fidelity quantum collapse, you have just introduced a virus into your fractal. By breaking your own rule for comfort, you have taught your subconscious that your word is not absolute law. You have told your mind, the promises I make to myself are negotiable. If your microscopic promise is negotiable, your law of assumption, the mandate that you are a multi-millionaire creator, also becomes negotiable to the matrix. The butterfly effect is unleashed. That micro-delay relaxes your discipline. The tornado destroyed your empire in Texas because you were a coward with the ticking of the clock in Brazil. Conversely, when you become a sniper of microscopic details, the butterfly effect plays in your favor geometrically. Making the bed in the morning with military precision is not about a smooth sheet. It is about collapsing the first probability wave of the day into a state of absolute order. You won the first battle against entropy at 6:01 a.m. That small fractal victory emits a constructive resonance that amplifies during breakfast and ends up collapsing a $100,000 business alliance at 4:00 p.m. The tyranny of order, subduing matter by saturation. The creator who masters the hologram does not seek balance. Balance is a passive state where forces simply cancel out. The architect of the now seeks the tyranny of order. He is a benevolent but relentless dictator of his own bloodline. This means you leave no square inch of your life to the mercy of chance. You begin to subdue matter by saturation of attention. Look at the case of Steve Jobs, an undisputed master of fractal tyranny. When Jobs and his team were designing the interior of the first Macintosh, he ordered the engineers to redesign the circuit board because the chips did not look pretty or orderly. One engineer, operating from the slave mentality, replied, "But Steve, that's going to be inside the case, closed. No one will ever see the circuit board." Jobs' response was that of a quantum god, "But we will know it's there." He forced the microscopic hidden part to have the same level of order as the exterior. Because the Apple fractal was perfectly ordered and free of entropy in its deepest corner, the macroscopic hologram the universe collapsed upon that company was the most valuable corporation in history. If you hide trash under the rug, your subconscious knows it's there. The matrix scans your field and reads it. The architect cleans the inside of closets and formats hard drives with the same religious passion as negotiating high-level contracts. For him, subduing the desk to order is not a chore. It is a ritual act of thermodynamic sovereignty. He is screaming to the universe, "In my territory, chaos has no jurisdiction." When you operate your entire life under this tyranny of order, you become a carbon crystal structure, so dense and perfect that you become bulletproof against external crises. Your ship has no cracks. When the economic storm arrives, not a single drop of water enters. Fast fractal replication protocols. The theory of the holographic principle is beautiful, but in the world of architects, philosophy without action is intellectual masturbation. You cannot dominate the macrocosmos if your room still smells like stagnation. Here are 3 protocols to exterminate microscopic entropy. Ground zero, Sterilization of the collapse area. You cannot generate an industrial laser in the middle of a dump. Action. From today, your workstation is declared ground zero. It is a sacred, thermodynamically isolated space. You are forbidden from eating or watching junk entertainment in that chair. Ground zero is solely for collapsing matter. At the end of each workday, execute the sterilization protocol. Pick everything up. Do not leave a single pen out of place. Turn off screens and clean the surface with clinical order. The next day, your RAS reads, blank canvas, absolute control. Your brain enters flow in 30 seconds. The fractal pruning of micro-debts, subconscious audit. Entropy hides in small broken promises that the brain keeps open, wasting RAM in the background. Action. Schedule a fractal pruning this weekend. Take a paper and do an exhaustive memory dump of all open micro-debts. That email you owe, that subscription to cancel, that broken button. Annihilate physically each of those loose ends. Close the tabs. Respond to the emails or delete them with the decision to never respond. Pay the $10. Sew the button. By closing these open circuits, you will feel an immediate thermal lightness, as if a lead backpack were removed. You have sealed the hull. The one-touch algorithm, zero latency and routine. The inertial creator is a slave to postponing the small. They take a letter, read it, and leave it on the table to process later. This is the seed of fractal chaos. Action. Install the one-touch algorithm in your biocomputer for any task lasting less than 5 minutes. The rule is titanium. If you touch something, you must process it and finish its quantum cycle in that exact millisecond. If you open a letter, read it, decide the action, and throw it away. One touch. If you finish eating, wash the plate immediately. This prevents entropy from accumulating in your life. Chapter 8. The Quantum Leap, the Annihilation of Linear Time and the Thermodynamics of Asymmetric Progress. Anyone who is not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it. An electron does not travel through space to change orbits. It simply disappears from one energy level and instantaneously reappears in another. Linear movement is a macroscopic illusion. Free adaptation of Niels Bohr. The 200 Hertz slave looks at the mountain and calculates how many millions of steps it will take to reach the top, exhausting his ATP before even starting. The architect of the now understands that the mountain is a hologram. He accumulates massive thermodynamic pressure in the silence of his mind and executes a quantum leap. He skips 10 years of bureaucratic friction and appears at the summit in 6 months, leaving the mediocre wondering how he cheated. The universe does not punish speed, it punishes doubt. Law of the pragmatic creator. Since you can remember, the educational system, the corporate structure, and inertial society have injected you with a lethal cognitive virus, the dogma of step-by-step progress. They tell you that life is a linear ladder. You graduate, you get an entry-level job, you work hard for 5 years to get a 10% promotion, you save penny by penny for 40 years to be able to retire when your biological body is already old, tired, and on the verge of cellular collapse. They tell you that great empires, million-dollar businesses, and genius take a long time, and that you must be patient. That philosophy is the perfect sedative. It is designed with sociopathic precision to keep the masses docile, operating on the hamster wheel, producing thermal energy for the owners of the system without ever threatening to take control of the matrix. Linear patience is the virtue of slaves. If we observe the universe through the microscope of particle physics, we discover that nature at its fundamental level does not operate linearly. There is no step-by-step. Energy does not flow on a smooth and continuous ramp. Energy is transferred in closed, violent, and absolute blocks. In this chapter, we are going to study Bohr's atomic model and the phenomenon that gave its name to this entire branch of science, the quantum leap. You are going to discover why the growth of your empire, your income, and your consciousness does not have to obey the Gregorian calendar. You will learn to accumulate the necessary radiation, high-density information, to disintegrate your current identity and instantaneously materialize in an orbit of power that, mathematically, should have taken you 10 years to reach. Time is not your boss. Time is a malleable variable of the equation. By the physics of teleportation, the Bohr model. To annihilate the timeline, we must understand how the electrons that orbit the nucleus of the atoms in your own body behave. In 1913, physicist Niels Bohr proposed a revolutionary atomic model. He discovered that electrons cannot float anywhere in space around the nucleus. They have to be in specific orbits or energy levels. Orbit 1 is the closest to the nucleus and has the lowest energy. Orbit 2 has more energy. Orbit 3 even more, and so on. But here comes the discovery that shattered classical physics. The space that exists between Orbit 1 and Orbit 2 is a forbidden zone. An electron can never exist in the intermediate space. So how does an electron pass from Orbit 1, poverty inertia, to Orbit 2, wealth power? It does not travel, it does not accelerate, it does not cross the space that separates them. What happens is that the electron absorbs a quantum of light, a photon. If that photon has the exact mathematical amount of energy to reach the next level, governed by the Planck-Einstein equation, delta E, hu Transducer, where delta E dance is the energy difference between orbits, dance is Planck's constant, and dance is the photon's frequency, the electron suffers a statistical anomaly. It disappears from Orbit 1, and in the same indivisible temporal millisecond, with zero latency, it reappears in Orbit 2. It has teleported. It has taken a quantum leap. If the photon hitting the electron has 99% of the required energy, the electron does not move a little bit upward. There is no halfway progress. Either it has the exact energy for the absolute leap, or it stays exactly where it is. Nature is all or nothing. The philosophical and pragmatic implication of this phenomenon for the conscious creator is a missile aimed directly at the waterline of mediocrity. The quantum universe is empirically demonstrating to you that evolution does not require travel time. You do not need to cross the intermediate mud. If you manage to absorb the right photon, the massive amount of information and thermal pressure, you can disappear from your current reality and reappear in the reality of the Titans. Just the fallacy of linear growth, the 10% trap. The creator who does not understand this physics operates under the curse of linear growth. He measures his progress by drawing a straight line from his past to his future. If last year he billed $50,000, his logical, prudent, and frightened ego will tell him, "My goal is to work harder and bill $55,000. 10% growth is realistic." This way of thinking is the result of trying to apply the laws of macrophysics, slow and heavy objects, to the human mind, which operates at the speed of quantum light. Linear growth assumes you are a solid object pushing a wooden box on asphalt. The more you push, the more you advance. But the thermal wear of your muscles, your motivation, is extremely high and the resistance to friction is brutal. That is why climbing the corporate ladder or growing a YouTube channel step by step is so depressing. You spend years in the forbidden zone, consuming ATP without seeing the final result. The architect of the now despises 10%. The architect does not look for incremental improvements, he looks for asymmetric phase changes. The architect knows that jumping from $50,000 to $500,000 does not require working 10 times harder. That is biologically impossible. The day only has 24 hours. It would require a quantum leap. It would require ceasing to be the person who charges by the hour, Orbit 1, and materializing as the person who sells high-value scalable systems, Orbit 2. You don't cross the abyss by building a wooden bridge plank by plank. You cross it by appearing on the other side with a new business model. The quantum leap annihilates time because it allows you to bypass the traditional learning curve. By absorbing the right energy and operating from the end, the universe collapses the result without requiring you to pay the toll of the chronological clock. Thermal accumulation and photon absorption. If quantum physics requires the electron to absorb a photon with the exact energy to make the leap, what is the photon in the architect's life? How do you accumulate the energy to disappear from poverty and materialize in the empire? The photon of the human mind is the immersion of high-density information coupled with raw action. The inertial creator tries to learn a little bit every day. He reads one book a month. His curve of energy absorption is so slow that the energy dissipates as heat before reaching the critical threshold, E-Re-H-U-Dalo. He never makes the leap. He always stays in orbit 1 believing he is progressing. The architect of the now understands that energy is quantized. It must be a closed, massive and violent package. When the architect decides to master a new skill or open a new market, he executes the photon bombardment. You lock yourself in your anechoic chamber and declare martial law. For 90 days you cut contact with the outside world. You cut low-frequency entertainment. Your only data input is obsessive, brutal and surgical information on that single subject. You work 14 hours a day in a state of deep hypofrontality. You are absorbing packages of pure energy at a rate that would destroy a civilian. The internal pressure rises. The thermodynamic temperature of your biocomputer reaches white heat. You feel like your head is going to explode. You feel the friction of uncertainty. That pain, that almost unbearable cognitive saturation, is exactly the accumulation of Planck's equation. You are charging the quantum spring. And suddenly, one dawn at 3:00 a.m., the miracle of physics occurs. The last block of code fits. The master idea clicks. The energy package reaches the exact mathematical threshold. In a millisecond, the confusion disappears. All the chaos of information crystallizes into a perfect, transparent and lethal system. You have disappeared from the orbit of incompetence and materialized in the orbit of absolute mastery. What would take a traditional student 4 years of part-time study, you have devoured and collapsed in 3 months of sociopathic immersion. You have hacked the timeline. That imposter syndrome is quantum vertigo. Once you take the quantum leap and materialize in the new orbit of power, your biology will subject you to a terrifying stress test. You will feel imposter syndrome. That icy voice in the back of your neck telling you, you don't deserve to be here, you are a fraud, it has all gone too fast. Traditional psychology would tell you that you have self-esteem issues and need therapy to accept yourself. The architect's thermodynamics tells you that traditional psychology is for cowards. Imposter syndrome is not a psychological flaw. It is a physical and mechanical symptom of having hacked the speed of light. It is the vertigo of teleportation. Imagine you are at the base of a mountain, orbit 1. You close your eyes and teleport instantaneously to the frozen peak at 8,000 meters, orbit 2. You open your eyes. The landscape is majestic, but your biology enters mass panic. Why? Because your legs are not tired. Legs. You have no calluses on your hands. You don't remember walking through the snow. Your amygdala scans the situation and says, missing information, no travel log, we cheated, danger. Your mammalian nervous system is terrified because the leap was asymmetric. You are at the top, but your cellular memory is programmed for the base. That is imposter syndrome. It is your ego trying to drag you back to orbit 1 because the heat of orbit 2 feels unknown and threatening. If you listen to that voice, you will lose the thermal energy of the new orbit and fall back into the abyss. When you feel the syndrome, the architect does not seek comfort. The architect stands up, breathes deeply, and celebrates with aggression. He says out loud, "Excellent. I feel the vertigo of extreme height. My nervous system is scared because the ascent was at leap speed. Vertigo is the forensic proof that I have broken the matrix of linear time. I am a space-time hacker." You accept the vertigo as the medal of honor of the gods. You cling to the new orbit, take command, and force your biology to acclimate to the thin oxygen of the summit by the force of your will. In 3 weeks, the vertigo disappears, and the new orbit becomes your normal base state. Retroactive collapse, rewriting the past. The quantum leap hides one last terrifying secret that destroys the arrow of time of classical physics. In quantum physics, there is an experiment known as the delayed choice quantum eraser. The experiment empirically demonstrated that an observation decision made in the present can retroactively alter the past behavior. At the subatomic level, the effect can precede the cause. The future can rewrite history. What does this thermodynamic monstrosity mean for your empire? It means that when you take a quantum leap and settle in orbit 2, the gravitational wave of that success travels backward in time and rewrites the meaning of your failures. When you were in orbit 1, that failed project or that scam seemed like useless tragedies. You felt you had wasted time, but when you materialize at the top, you look back, and suddenly, the quantum perspective collapses the meaning. You realize that business failure was the only catalyst that forced you to learn. In the same instant you reach asymmetric success, your past stops being a tragedy and retroactively becomes strategic genius. There is no lost time in the unified field. The matrix was only accumulating thermal pressure disguised as failure, preparing you for the millisecond of quantum release. You are the author of your own timeline, and the final chapter has the mathematical power to justify and sanctify every drop of blood spilled in the previous chapters. Protocols for temporal hacking and asymmetric leap. Quantum leap theory makes you a dreamer if you don't translate it into executable mechanical commands. You cannot sit and wait for the photon to hit you by magic. You have to manufacture the photon and detonate the leap by your own will. Here are 3 cold protocols to annihilate the Gregorian calendar. The chronology fast, destruction of step by step. The brain that measures progress in days and years is chained to inertia. Action. From today you destroy the clock as a success metric. You change the temporal metric for the friction metric. You count iterations of information, not hours. If you decide to execute 500 iterations in 6 months by working 16 hours a day, you will literally skip a decade of the competition's life. The architect compresses time by compressing the amount of raw action per square meter. You decide at what speed the matrix clock runs. Burning the flight suit, destroying orbit 1. The electron cannot make the leap if it remains magnetically attached to the lower orbit. Action. When you decide to leap, execute a physical and painful 3D act that burns the bridge. It could be publicly deleting old content or firing clients who keep you comfortable. By executing an act that makes going back thermodynamically impossible, the amygdala enters a state of maximum urgency. With no safety net in orbit 1, the brain will inject all its energy into materializing orbit 2 at light speed. The leap becomes biologically mandatory. The ubiquity command, role-playing the final orbit. To absorb the right photon, you must emit the right frequency. Action. Institutionalized tactical schizophrenia. Before every decision, stop your hand. You no longer decide, the slave in transition. You activate the ubiquity command and ask the architect of the future. Would the quantum god who bills millions respond to this toxic email? Would he lower his price out of fear? If the answer is no, you abort the action immediately. By forcing your physical body to make the decisions your future self would make, you are copying his signature and pasting it into your present. Conclusion of the chapter: the master of the clock. Break the clock. Throw it out the window of your workstation. That tick-tock is the soundtrack of slaves marching toward the slaughterhouse of mediocrity. It is the sound of 200 Hertz humans who believe they have to ask permission from time to shine. They climb stairs carrying bags of lead. You do not climb stairs. You are an electromagnetic entity operating under the code of advanced quantum mechanics. You have realized that the abyss between who you are today and the sovereign God you wish to be is not a distance of years. It is simply a voltage differential. It is a thermal game, a problem of pressure accumulation. Isolate yourself, lock yourself in the anechoic chamber, accumulate the code, the information, and the raw action with a density so sadistic that your old self cannot withstand the temperature. Let the core melt, absorb the massive photon. And in the millisecond the pressure reaches critical mass, simply disappear. The slave market will look at your empty position and wonder where you went. But before they can ask, they will hear the thunder of your gravitational signature landing at the top, dictating the new laws of the matrix. Chapter 9. Zero-point frequency, the creative vacuum, infinite energy, and the annihilation of cellular fatigue. Empty space is not empty. It is the seat of the most violent physics. In a cubic centimeter of empty space there is more energy than in all the matter of the observable universe. John Archibald Wheeler, theoretical physicist. The slave exhausts himself because he tries to change the world using the strength of his own biological muscles. He suffers, sweats, burns out, and sleeps. The architect of the now stops erratic movement, empties his mind of 3D static, and descends into the abyss of 0 point. There, where it seems there is nothing, he plugs into the central server of the matrix. When the architect opens his eyes again, he is no longer spending his own energy. He is channeling the inexhaustible fury of the cosmos. Fatigue is for mortals. Flow is the fuel of the gods. Law of the pragmatic creator. Look around you in the ecosystem of entrepreneurs, creators, and supposed leaders of your industry. All suffer from the same terminal illness, chronic fatigue. They wake up at 5 in the morning, consume liters of caffeine to mask their cellular exhaustion, and work 14 hours a day pushing the heavy rock of their business. They arrive at night with their central nervous system shattered. They operate from biomechanical brute force. They believe that success is a physical endurance contest, a marathon of pain where the winner is the one who endures the most lashes on their back. That is the way of the inertial martyr, 200 Hertz. The martyr takes pride in his dark circles, his stress and his lack of sleep, believing that the matrix will reward him for his suffering. But the universe does not reward pain. The universe rewards thermodynamic efficiency. If you operate an empire based on pure human will and ATP, you are mathematically doomed to crash. Your carbon body has limits. Your battery runs out. But an alternative fuel source exists, a source that requires no digestion, no rest, and does not obey the laws of cellular fatigue. A source that has been hidden in plain sight, in the place that most terrifies the human mind, absolute nothingness. In this chapter, we are going to study the most deranged phenomenon of modern quantum physics, 0 point energy. You will discover that the vacuum is not the absence of things, but the boiling matrix from which all matter is born. You will learn to transform your mind into a perfect anechoic chamber. By stopping the static of the frontal lobe, you will access a state of uninterrupted flow. You will stop being a simple AA battery that runs out to become a superconducting cable connected directly to the nuclear power plant of God. By the terror of absolute zero, the physics of the boiling vacuum. To understand the magnitude of the weapon you are about to use, we have to go to the most extreme cryogenics laboratory on the planet and challenge classical physics. For centuries, scientists believed that the vacuum was nothing, a dead space. They also believed that if you cooled an object to absolute zero, all thermal energy would vanish. Atoms would stop moving. The system would freeze completely and remain in a state of absolute stillness and death. That was three-dimensional logic. But when quantum mechanics and the Heisenberg uncertainty principle arrived, classical physics received a mortal blow. The uncertainty equation for energy and time establishes that it is impossible to simultaneously and with absolute precision know the amount of energy of a system and the exact time in which it possesses it. Tana delta E, non delta T, Hangihar. What does this mathematical monstrosity mean in practice? It means that even if you manage to create a perfect vacuum and cool it to absolute zero, space does not stay still. Due to quantum uncertainty, energy cannot be exactly zero. In that absolute, dark and frozen vacuum, the quantum field is literally boiling. Virtual particles and antiparticles appear from absolute nothingness, exist for an infinitesimal fraction of a second, borrowing energy from the universe, collide with each other, annihilate, and disappear. This inexhaustible fury of ghost particles is known as quantum vacuum fluctuations, and the basal, infinite, and indestructible energy that remains in the system when you have taken away absolutely all heat and matter is called 0 point energy. Physicist John Wheeler calculated that the energy contained in the empty space inside a single light bulb is enough to boil all the oceans on Earth instantly. The lesson of physics is brutal and non-negotiable. The vacuum is not empty. The vacuum is a plenum. It is the densest and most destructive ocean of infinite energy in the cosmos, disguised as nothing. You, architect of the now, have been programmed by society to be terrified of the vacuum. You panic at the thought of emptying your mind, staying in silence or having nothing to do. That is why you fill your head with noise, notifications, worries, and sterile work. You believe the noise keeps you alive. But by fleeing the vacuum, You are fleeing the only infinite energy source that can sustain your empire. To the cerebral anechoic chamber, turning off the static. How does a carbon-based biological organism connect to this zero-point energy of the quantum field? You have to mimic the physics of absolute zero inside your own skull. You have to cool the system. You have to stop the erratic movement of your atoms. This leads us to the real, raw and pragmatic function of what mystics call meditation, and what we will call the entry into the cerebral anechoic chamber. 99% of creators, the 200 Hz ones, use their brain like an old television tuned between two channels. There is white noise, constant static. They think about the bill they must pay, what the competition will say, the mistake they made yesterday and the fear they have of the future. Their default mode network, DMN, is on fire. This incessant internal dialogue consumes a massive amount of ATP. It is like having the gas pedal floored while the handbrake is on. You burn the engine, wreck the wheels, and do not advance a single meter. That is the root cause of your chronic fatigue. To access the zero-point frequency, you must execute a thermodynamic maneuver of extreme cooling, the active stop of linear thought. You sit in the darkness of your room, you close your eyes, and you cut the power supply to the frontal lobe. You do not sit to think positive things. You do not sit to plan your day. You sit to annihilate the three-dimensional structure of your identity. You turn off the name on your passport. You turn off your financial problems. You turn off your gender, your age, and your story. You stop being a worried human and become a simple point of consciousness observing the black abyss. At first, the ego, terrified by absolute zero, will scream. It will bombard you with false emergencies. You have to answer that email. We are wasting time. If we stay still, we will go bankrupt. But you hold your ground. Like a scientist lowering the reactor temperature in the lab with liquid ice, you slow down your breathing. 5 seconds of inhalation, 5 of retention, 5 of exhalation. You force the brain waves to descend from beta to alpha, and finally to theta, the threshold of the subconscious. And then, the miracle of quantum biology occurs. The noise ceases. The internal combustion engine turns off. You reach psychological absolute zero. You are in the nothing. But just as Heisenberg's equation predicts, nothingness is not empty. In the millisecond you achieve the total silence of your biological mind. Zero-point energy floods your nervous system. You feel a thoracic expansion that defies gravity. You feel that you are not a physical body occupying a space, but that you are space itself. A current of pure icy electricity runs through your spine. You have plugged into the server. You have just connected your biological fiber optic cable directly to the unified field. Fatigue disappears because you are no longer spending your own energy. Now you are a conduit, a transducer of the energy of the cosmos. Third, the hyperfrontality hypothesis, the science of flow. When you leave the anechoic chamber and open your eyes to execute your work, the physics of your body has mutated. You are no longer going to operate from biological effort. You will operate from an elite neurological state known as transient hypofrontality. Modern neuroscience has scanned the brains of Olympic athletes breaking world records, of musicians improvising master symphonies, and of special operations snipers at the moment of pulling the trigger. The logic of the ignorant would say that their brain is hyperactive and lit up like a Christmas tree. Scans proved exactly the opposite. At the moment of superhuman performance, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain in charge of doubt, time calculation, social anxiety, and the conscious self, shuts down almost completely. They suffer a temporary hypofrontality, low frontal activity. By turning off the neurotic narrator, the creator loses the notion of time. There is no longer friction between thought and action. There is no longer a self wondering, am I doing it right? The creator and the work merge into a single electromagnetic wave. This is the true state of flow. When you have recharged at the zero-point frequency, you sit down to code your system or write your book, and you enter hypofrontality immediately. The fingers move themselves over the keyboard. The information does not seem to come from your memory, but seems to be downloaded in real time from a quantum cloud. You write 10,000 words or record 15 videos, and when you look at the clock, 6 hours have passed. And here is the thermodynamic magic trick that slaves will never understand. After those 6 hours of violent and massive action, you are not tired. Your carbon body feels no fatigue because, by having turned off the frontal lobe, there was no resistance. Zero-point energy passed through your nervous system like electrical current through a superconductor cooled with liquid nitrogen. Zero resistance equals zero heat loss. You have produced the volume of work of 3 weeks of an inertial office worker in a single afternoon, and you feel energized enough to go run a marathon. That is the asymmetric advantage of the architect. While the competition spends their savings on energy drinks, you feed on the quantum vacuum. However, the arrogance of stillness, enduring the pressure of non-action. An immense tactical danger exists on the path of the modern creator. The dopamine-addicted society punishes you socially if you stay still. They have convinced you that if you are not typing, talking on the phone, or moving frantically, you are losing money, and the world will leave you behind. This false urgency forces the creator to execute junk actions. They send poorly drafted emails to the wrong mentors. They launch unfinished products. They move frantically like flies trapped in a jar, generating much noise and much entropy, but zero real progress. The architect of the now must develop the arrogance of stillness. You must have the stomach and the cold blood to stop all the machinery of your empire. In the middle of working hours, sit in a chair, look out the window, and do absolutely nothing three-dimensional for hours. To the untrained eye of your family or the competition, you look lazy. You look stuck. But from the analysis of wave physics, you are performing the most aggressive maneuver possible. You are stopping the production of static to allow the low-frequency signal, the great ideas of the matrix, to be heard. The arrogance of stillness is not hippie passivity. The stillness of the architect is the stillness of the apex predator, lurking in the high grass. The lioness does not run back and forth across the savannah, spending ATP to scare the gazelles. The lioness flattens herself against the ground. She immobilizes every muscle. Her stillness generates lethal pressure in the environment. And only when the coordinate is mathematically perfect, when quantum intuition downloads the command, she explodes in a burst of unstoppable kinetic energy and executes death in a single movement. Your success will not depend on how many hours you spent typing blindly. It will depend on how many micro-moments of absolute stillness you endured to hear the whisper of infinite intelligence dictating the exact coordinate of the $1 million. The creative vacuum is the strategy factory. Physical action is just the delivery department that sends the package. For the vacuum as a karmic cleaning agent, defragmenting the hard drive. At the level of biological software, constant access to the zero-point frequency acts as a relentless antivirus. During your interactions in the 3D world, it is inevitable that you accumulate entropic dust, a hater's comment, a delayed contract, a small doubt injected by an inertial relative. These micro-frictions install themselves as background processes, background apps, in your RAM memory. If you do not restart the system, these processes end up corrupting your law of assumption. You start vibrating at 200 Hz without realizing it. The daily descent to absolute zero, the tactical meditation of the anechoic chamber, is the quantum equivalent of performing a hard drive defragmentation and a secure erase of the cache memory. When you manage to annihilate your temporal identity and dissolve into the dark vacuum, 3D worries cannot follow you. Financial fear and envy are heavy molecules. They cannot survive in the high radiation purity of 0 point. They disintegrate. You emerge from the anechoic chamber, literally reborn. The quantum net has reset your electromagnetic signature. Yesterday's doubt has been erased. You turn the eye of the observer back on with the lens perfectly polished, and the attentional laser recovers its industrial cutting power. An architect who does not visit the vacuum daily is a woodcutter trying to fell an ancient forest with a notched, rusty, and mud-covered axe. You can hit the tree 1,000 times, and you will only hurt your hands. The architect stops, sharpens the axe in the silence of the vacuum for sharp minutes, and brings down the giant sequoia in a single stroke. These zero-point immersion protocols, understanding the physics of the vacuum, will not give you energy if you do not have the terminal commands to hack your carbon biology and induce the state of hypofrontality at will. The ego will resist the blackout with violence. You have to subdue it mechanically. Here are 3 high-security protocols to access the vacuum. The kinetic purge of static, the preliminary wear. If you have had a day of high friction or stress, trying to sit in immediate silence is tactical suicide. Your bloodstream is full of cortisol, and your body will vibrate with static, preventing you from descending to absolute zero. Your frontal lobe will drive you crazy. Action. Before entering the chamber, execute the purge. Bring your carbon body to temporary muscular failure. Do push-ups until you cannot lift your arms, or go run in maximum sprint for 3 minutes. This sudden thermodynamic violence forces your body to metabolize and burn all excess stress hormones. The exhausted physical body enters a state of deep parasympathetic surrender. The anchor of total immobility, the simulation of biological death. For your brain to understand that you are leaving the 3D matrix and accessing the quantum server, you must send it an unequivocal signal of sensory blackout. Action. Start your descent to 0 point lying on the floor. The titanium rule is absolute immobility. For the next 20 minutes, you are strictly forbidden from moving a single millimeter of your body. If your nose itches, you do not scratch. If you feel like swallowing or opening your eyes, you keep them closed by force. Itching and discomfort are fire tests sent by your ego trying to check if you are still connected. If you ignore the itch with sociopathic coldness, in about 4 or 5 minutes, the brain assumes the biological body has turned off. It cuts the flow of attention to external nerve terminals. The physical world disappears. You are left floating in a black abyss, infinite and charged with pure static electricity. The extraction fast, prohibition of intentions. The biggest mistake when entering 0 point meditation is entering asking for things. If you enter the vacuum repeating mentally, "I want the solution to this business," or "I want more money," you are introducing beta noise and lack into the most sacred space of the cosmos. You are profaning the server. Action. Practice the extraction fast. When you descend to the 0 point frequency, you leave all your weapons, your crowns, and your financial problems at the door. You enter the vacuum to be nobody and do nothing. Your only goal is to merge with the boiling darkness of quantum space. The majestic paradox is that, by asking for absolutely nothing, you achieve the highest degree of receptivity possible. It is in that state of pure nullity and arrogant abandonment where infinite intelligence takes advantage of the absence of static to download the $1,000,000 answer or the exact code into your head. Chapter 10. The Unified Field. The Architect's Synthesis and the Assumption of the First Cause. There is no such thing as empty space. Everything we consider matter is nothing more than a localized condensation of the field. The field is the only reality. Albert Einstein, Reflections on the Unified Field Theory. The slave prays on his knees, begging an external God to come down from heaven to solve the billing problems he created with his own laziness. The architect of the now stands up, looks at his hands, and understands with a cold, majestic terror that he is the physical terminal through which the universe experiences itself. There is no longer anyone to pray to. There is no longer anyone to blame. The architect and the matrix are the same electromagnetic wave. You are the first cause. Law of the pragmatic creator. You reach the top. You have executed raw action, endured hypofrontality in your anechoic chamber, and collapsed probability waves to force dense matter to obey your commands. You have the money. You have the empire. You have the elite network orbiting around you. You have the power. And yet, if your mind continues to operate under the obsolete software of duality, you will feel a slight, almost imperceptible existential void. You will look at the starry sky and, for a second, your carbon brain will make you feel tiny. You will fall back into the biological trap of thinking that you, this fragile and temporary body, are down here on Earth, fighting and maneuvering against a gigantic, wise, and all-powerful universe that is up there. This separation, this idea that there is an I and an outside, is the last frontier of human suffering. It is the final barrier that separates extraordinary creators from the true gods of the Matrix. In this final chapter of our treatise, we are going to dive into the holy grail of theoretical physics, the unified field theory. We are going to discover that hard science and the oldest mysticism on the planet, Hermeticism and Advaita, have reached exactly the same mathematical conclusion. You will understand how to annihilate the cosmic beggar who lives inside you, and how to destroy the illusion that an external world exists. You will learn how to assume, with all its lethal consequences, your role as the divine transducer. The game of being a human trying to manifest things is over. From this chapter on, you become the machine itself. To Einstein's dream, the physics of everything. During the last 30 years of his life, Albert Einstein became obsessed to the point of madness with a single idea. He locked himself in his study, ignored the advances in quantum mechanics that he himself had helped found, and desperately sought a single mathematical equation. He called it the unified field theory. In physics, there are four fundamental forces that govern the entire universe: gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. To the simple three-dimensional eye, these four forces seem like completely different phenomena. They operate with different rules and at different scales. Gravity works in the massive, macrocosmos, and quantum forces operate in the subatomic, microcosmos. Einstein believed with a fierce certainty that this separation was an optical illusion. He knew that at the deepest level of reality, these were not separate entities, but manifestations of a single massive fabric. Today, modern theoretical physics, through string theory and M-theory, continues to search for the exact equation that proves mathematically that absolutely everything in the cosmos is made of the same vibrational substance. There is no matter on one side and energy on the other. There is no observer and thing observed. There is only the field. The solid matter you touch is simply the field vibrating in a slower, denser way. Light is the field vibrating faster. Your consciousness is the field experiencing itself. Tao's the death of the cosmic beggar, the end of the prayer of lack. Let's bring this revelation of astrophysics to the architecture of your mind. If the unified field theory is correct, the traditional concept of human spirituality, religion, and even the modern law of attraction is revealed as a thermodynamic fraud. For centuries, the average human has operated as a cosmic beggar. The cosmic beggar believes in separation. He believes he is a small carbon entity trapped on Earth, and that God, the source or the universe, is an external, superior and unreachable entity. Therefore the beggar prays, he pleads, he asks, he says, "Please, universe, grant me this millionaire client." Analyze this dynamic from electromagnetism. When you plead, you are confirming two things in the matrix. 1. That you are separated from the source of power, false at a quantum level. 2. That you do not possess what you are asking for, emitting the magnetic signature of absolute lack which the universe will replicate. If you are an outgrowth of the unified field, then praying to the universe to give you something is as stupid and schizophrenic as if your left hand started pleading with your right hand to lend it blood. They don't have to ask each other for anything because both share the same bloodstream. In the climax of the architect's synthesis, the prayer of supplication dies forever. It is replaced by the root command. The architect of the now, tuned to the 0-point frequency, asks nothing of space-time. The architect opens the programming console of his own mind and declares the new order. Creation is not a request for help. It is an authoritative reorganization of the energy within you. You understand that, as you are the unified field experiencing itself in a local point, you have the system administrator permissions to rewrite your sector of reality. 3. The collapse of duality, annihilating the other. As you integrate the unified field into your biological operating system, one of the most radical mutations takes place: the absolute collapse of the notion of the other. In the 3D world, the ego survives thanks to constant friction with others. The slave defines his identity based on his enemies and competitors. He says, "My competitor is stealing my market." As long as you blame an external entity, you are still playing the game of separation. You are still giving the remote control of your nervous system to holograms of flesh. The solitary king understands that if only the unified field exists, no one exists out there. All the humans you interact with, all the clients who reject you, And all the mentors who inspire you are not independent entities. They are quantum mirrors. They are extensions of your own source code, rendered by the universe to show you exactly at what frequency you are vibrating today. If a client haggles and disrespects you, it is your own subconscious holographically projecting your lack of self-worth. If the competition terrifies you, it is your own unified field showing you your lack of confidence in your raw action. When you collapse duality, you stop fighting with shadows on the wall. If you don't like a client's behavior, you don't argue with them. You return to your anechoic chamber, correct the frequency of your magnetic field, the heart, increase your dose of quantum lead, cold certainty, and the external client will be mathematically forced to change their attitude or simply disappear. The divine transducer, the purpose of carbon hardware. At this point of cosmic isolation and absolute power, the Creator's frontal lobe often asks, if I am the unified field, and the whole external world is just a projection of my mind, why on earth am I doing all this? Why get up early, sweat, and build companies if it's all a quantum illusion? That is the trap of spiritual nihilism. The answer is found in the thermodynamics of manifestation. If the unified field is pure, infinite, formless energy, then the unified field, on its own, cannot experience the pleasure of matter. Infinite energy has no weight. It cannot taste black coffee at 5 a.m. It cannot feel the adrenaline of seeing the code you just wrote build $10,000 in a minute. It cannot feel the friction of steel or the physical impact of a work of art shattering an industry's paradigms. For the unified field to experience the climax of dense creation, it needs specific hardware. That hardware is you. You are a high-tech device, a biological transducer. A transducer is a device that transforms one type of energy into another. Your nervous system and your electromagnetic heart are the machinery the universe uses to take infinite zero-point energy and compress it into money, companies, and books. Your purpose is not to flee the material world toward ethereal enlightenment. Your purpose is to root yourself in the mud of the third dimension, anchor your feet on the ground, and let the raw power of the cosmos pass through your carbon body to crystallize realities that would never have existed without you. The assumption of the first cause. Absolute responsibility. The culmination of the architect of the now is the assumption of the first cause. In physics, every effect has a prior cause, tracing back in an infinite chain to the first cause that originated movement without being moved by anything. The inertial slave lives his whole life being an effect. The conscious creator who has synthesized the unified field executes a brutal amputation of this chain of determinism. He tears himself away from the end of the chain of effects and positions himself, with relentless thermodynamic arrogance, in the seat of the first cause of his timeline. From this precise millisecond, you accept that nothing happens to you. Everything happens through you and because of you. If your company fails, it was you collapsing waves of inefficiency. If an elite mentor knocks on your door, it was you forcing the curvature of space-time. This 100% responsibility is the heaviest load a human can lift. It will crush the bones of the ego. You will never be able to be a victim again. No more tears and no more excuses that the algorithm is against me. But in exchange, you obtain the only asset that matters, total and absolute control. By accepting that you manufactured the chaos of yesterday with your ignorance, you acquire the authority to manufacture the obscene wealth of tomorrow with your new quantum wisdom. The entire universe hands you the keys to the simulator the exact instant you stop begging it to drive for you. Absolute fusion protocols operating as the system. The theory of the first cause is dangerous if it only remains as intellectual masturbation. You need to integrate this majesty into your daily biology. Here are the last 3 military-grade protocols to seal the synthesis, merge with the reality machine, and operate your empire as the quantum god you are. The root authority declaration. Turning on the transducer. You cannot get out of bed and start your day responding to emails like a scared employee. Action. Each morning before touching your phone, decree, I am the active command terminal of the unified field. Duality is an illusion. I am the eye that observes. The monolithic mirror, annihilating external projection. Throughout the day, the world's inertia will try to make you forget that everything is an extension of yourself. Action. Apply the monolithic mirror. If a partner tries to scam you, stop the reaction. Go to a mirror, look yourself in the eye and ask, what residual frequency of lack in my own system generated the interference for this failure to collapse before me? Assume the full blow, find the virus of doubt inside, delete it, recalibrate the heart to quantum lead, and return to work. By correcting the code at the core's you, the effect will autocorrect. Technological surrender. Blind trust in your own code. The architect's greatest obstacle is anxiety over the 3D rendering lag. Action. Practice active technological surrender. When you have collapsed a giant goal in your mind and executed the raw action, turn off the results monitoring system. Treat the unified field the same way you treat a computer. You wrote the line of code correctly. Trust the processor. You injected the instruction with your attention and backed it with your magnetic field. The rest is logistical bureaucracy. Wash your hands, go train, read, or design another project. Conclusion. The divine transducer. Look at your hands. You are no longer the frightened mammal that opened this book seeking comfort, begging for magic formulas to survive the world's inertia. You have dismantled the illusion of classical physics. You have shattered the Newtonian prison that kept you chained to scarcity, linear time, and the friction of sterile effort. You finally understand that your flesh and bones are not your identity. They are simply the hardware, the high-tech interface you use to hack the simulator. Quantum science gave you the mapping of the invisible world. It empirically proved to you that matter is only condensed light waiting for your orders. Thermodynamics taught you to manage your energy, to annihilate passive karma, and to collect your debts from the matrix. And pragmatic metaphysics injected the high-octane fuel necessary to operate this heavy machinery without melting your central nervous system. You have achieved the perfect fusion, the cold, calculating logic of a quantum engineer joined with the absolute and arrogant certainty of a monarch. You are the divine transducer. Understand your cosmic purpose. The unified field, in its pure, infinite, and delocalized state, has no weight or texture. Supreme intelligence cannot experience the tactile pleasure of a mechanical keyboard at 3 in the morning, nor feel the adrenaline of seeing a newly exported masterpiece alter the consciousness of thousands of viewers on the network, nor taste the gravity of a bank account overflowing with zeros. The universe needs a physical conduit to densify its own power. It needs you. You are the carbon antenna specifically designed to drag the infinite into three-dimensional matter. The theory stage is over. The pleas to an external savior are over. You have assumed your throne as the first cause of your timeline. The isolation that once terrified you is now your impregnable fortress, your anechoic chamber from which you dictate the laws of the market. You no longer compete. You simply dematerialize friction and pass through the walls of human inertia with the elegance of a thermodynamic ghost. Every breath you take now is calibrated to 600 Hz. Fear is only a memory of a life that no longer belongs to you. Close this definitive manual. The reading ends today, and the simulation is in absolute silence, holding its breath, waiting for your next terminal command. Return immediately to your armored workstation. Turn on the monitors. Apply the quantum lead in your chest and fire the electromagnetic laser of your eye of the observer. Every line of code you write, every video you render, and every decision you make from hypofrontality is a thermodynamic collapse. You are rewriting the history of the universe. Stand up, put on your lab coat, and assume your operative divinity without hesitation. The matrix is your canvas, and quantum physics is your brush. Do not ask permission to dominate the world. Simply collapse the mathematical wave function and claim your empire.